Almost 5,000 years ago, humanity was brought to its knees by Erebos, a being known as the Genesis of Evil. To rid the world of this darkness, four great heroes united. In the end, all of them perished in battle, leaving only one man standing, Kyle, the last hero, who represented human's side. Thanks to his friends' sacrifices, Kyle defeated the incarnation of evil and saved humanity. But that was 5,000 years ago. In the present day, history tells a different story, one where Kyle is completely erased from the record. Everyone is taught that it was Lycinus' sacrifice that brought about the defeat of Erebos, the genesis of evil. This has gone unquestioned until now. The real twist comes when Kyle, reborn in this era, learns of the tale of Erebos' defeat and realizes his name is nowhere to be found. We will follow the story of reborn Kyle, who, after discovering his absence from history, enrolls at Lumine Academy, the hero academy that houses the hero record, determined to reclaim his place in the world. Years have passed since the reincarnation of the hero Kyle, and now the scene is set at the Royal School of Delan. Inside the classroom, the teacher stands before the students who reminds them of the current era they are going through, which is known as the Age of Heroes. It has been 5,000 years since the hero record first appeared in the world, and the lower world has undergone many changes in that time. For example, the Royal School of Delan has been chosen to host this year's Lumine entrance examination. The teacher is filled with excitement, confident that among the students, some have the potential to become heroes. He believes that some will pass the entrance exam and one day have their names written in the hero record. Because of this, he urges everyone to pay attention during the lecture. However, not everyone shares the teacher's enthusiasm. One particular student, seated in the last row, appears completely uninterested and is instead catching some Z's. This student, of course, is Leo. The teacher is frustrated by his lack of attention. He reasons that if Leo isn't paying attention, it must mean he already knows the material and sees no need for instruction. To challenge him, the teacher asks him to explain the ritual from 5,000 years ago that one had to undergo to earn the title of a hero. Leo finally stands up from his seat and responds to the teacher's question in the most casual way possible. He simply states that if someone made a name for themselves, people would just start worshipping them on their own. By the way, Leo's full name is Leo Plav, a 15-year-old from the prestigious House of Plav. It goes without saying that the teacher is clearly disappointed by Leo's half-hearted answer. So, he turns to the class and asks if anyone else would like to volunteer a more detailed response. One of the brighter students eagerly raises their hand and offers an explanation. This student explains that in ancient times, there was no direct way to gain the gods' recognition. Instead, only holy rituals were used to choose who would be considered a hero. A prime example of such a ritual is the ritual of blood. The teacher is thoroughly impressed by the depth of the answer. He's certain that this student, Gullivan, will become the greatest magical genius in the kingdom. Gullivan hails from House Tratton. Anyhow, it seems like Leo is getting pretty tired of the usual nonsense he deals with on a daily basis. From his perspective, meeting the gods was nothing special back in the day, as it was just a part of life. After all, the gods once gifted the lower world with a miracle to celebrate the great heroes who fought against Erebos, the hero record. But for some reason, Leo can't understand why he's the only one who's been completely erased from history. No one seems to acknowledge his role, and it's starting to get to him. Later, the students gather around the windows, all eager to catch a glimpse of the Zerdinger clan as they march through the corridor. At the front of the group, there's a lady, Celia Zerdinger, a name that piques everyone's interest and curiosity. An announcement rings out, requesting all students to gather in the auditorium for a mandatory assembly, as the Zerdinger clan is visiting the school. As Leo begins to leave the classroom, Gullivan calls out to him. He asks if Leo plans to try and get noticed by the Zerdingers, but Leo, uninterested, simply shrugs it off. He has no desire to get involved in whatever spectacle this is. He just wants to go home. This nonchalance only fires up Gullivan. He can't believe how casually Leo is walking away from such an opportunity. In order to look just as cool as our boy, Gullivan explains that he himself does not care about Zerdingers either, but he's definitely going to check out Celia, especially since he considers her a fellow rival. Well, we can tell that this is just a lie, as he is definitely looking forward to being recognized by Zerdingers. Later, we find Leo in the dojo, visibly worn out after tirelessly swinging his practice stick. He eventually grabs his sword and heads for the exit. Just as he steps outside, he's ambushed by a woman who charges at him with the force of a runaway train. Leo, though startled, manages to block her strike with his blade. It's clear from their interaction that this isn't the first time these two have crossed swords. They have a shared history, one where such exchanges are far from uncommon. The lady is looking forward to sparring with him after so long, and declares that this match to be his final test before she grants him permission to attend Lumine Academy. As it turns out, this formidable woman is none other than his mother. In an instant, she lunges at him again, and their swords clash once again. While Leo is already struggling to keep up, His mother casually remarks that she hasn't even used a fraction of her full strength. Blow after blow, the spar continues, each strike more intense than the last. Eventually, however, Leo turns the tide. His sheer skill and mastery of swordsmanship allow him to overpower his mother, forcing her to surrender. The woman is left in awe of her son's talent and growth. She stands up and, in a softer tone, asks why he's so determined to attend Lumene Academy. Before the story moves forward, a little context about the academy is necessary. Lumene Academy, the Human Hero Academy, is one of the 4 prestigious institutions of the races that house the hero record. Among them, Leo strongly suspects Lumene Academy is the most likely place to uncover remnants of his past life as Hero Kyle. With such a compelling reason, it's no surprise that Leo is unwavering in his determination to join the academy. Leo's mother then reminds him that the members of the Zerdinger clan are currently visiting Daylon, and they will be staying at the Plav mansion. Though she personally isn't thrilled about having them in their home, she has a request to make. She intends to speak with Zeiss, the vice patriarch of the Zerdinger clan, hoping that he might be willing to teach Leo the Zerdinger aura technique. She believes that with the technique, Leo will become strong enough to be admitted to Lumene Academy next year. However, what she doesn't know is that her son is determined to be admitted this year. He has no patience to wait another whole year to achieve his goals. Sometime later, we find ourselves at the Plav mansion, where Celia Zerdinger is being escorted into the grounds. As soon as she steps out of the carriage, she can't help but wonder why her uncle chose to stay in a place like this when he could have easily rented an entire hotel for himself. As we know already, she is Celia Zerdinger, 15 years old, a sword princess hailing from the Zerdinger clan. Her primary focus is on the Lumene entrance exam, and she's skeptical about how a small family like the Plavs could possibly help her prepare for it. At that moment, Celia's uncle calls out to her. He is none other than Zeiss Zerdinger, the vice patriarch of the Zerdinger clan. He teasingly asks if she isn't at least a little curious to meet Leo, the very boy who boldly declared he wasn't interested in the Zerdinger clan. Celia remains nonchalant and remarks that if Leo is just a hopeful knight who can't even use aura yet, then, in her opinion, he's probably not all that impressive. Zeiss, however, doesn't share her sentiment. On the contrary, he seems quite optimistic about Leo's potential. Once they enter the mansion, Zeiss steps forward to greet the heads of the Plav household. He exchanges respectful words with Dade Plav, the patriarch, and Reyna Plav, his wife. Both hosts graciously return the gesture, welcoming the Zerdingers to their home with equal honor. Zeiss then formally introduces Celia to Reyna and Dade. The young lady promptly reciprocates their hospitality with a courteous introduction of her own. She expresses her gratitude for being hosted in their home. Reyna steps forward and takes a moment to observe Celia. She notes that Celia closely resembles her father and uncle, both in appearance and behavior. Celia, in turn, takes note of Reyna's striking black hair and red eyes. It doesn't take long for her to realize that Reyna is part of the Zerdinger family, which also makes her Celia's aunt. Later, Zeiss and Reyna, who share the bond of being brother and sister, sit back and begin catching up. During their conversation, Zeiss mentions their recent visit to the Royal School of Dalan, where they had hoped to catch a glimpse of Leo. However, they were disappointed to find that he had already left the school as he was uninterested in meeting anyone. Reyna apologizes on behalf of her son, acknowledging that his behavior may have seemed disrespectful. Zeiss then curiously questions his sister about Leo, asking what kind of person he is. Reyna speaks highly of him, claiming that Leo is unbelievably talented. Her response prompts Zeiss to question whether Leo is truly worthy to inherit the Zerdinger flames. Reyna's praise of her son continues, but she makes it clear that she's not simply speaking as a proud mother. Leo genuinely has the talent and potential to be worthy of the Zerdinger legacy. Zeiss is quite intrigued to hear this. While he trusts her judgment, he feels compelled to test Leo himself before forming a final opinion. Later, we meet Leo, sitting quietly, trying to concentrate. After finishing his little ritual, he declares to himself that he has finally achieved a vessel capable of holding everything he needs. Leo reflects on why he hadn't yet learned aura until now. The truth lies in the unique nature of his body. Accepting aura too early would cause it to naturally adapt and specialize in alignment with the aura. This would limit his ability to accumulate mana and soul energy, two essential components of his long-term plan. In his past life, he had witnessed the danger of uncontrolled power. If he had fully harnessed the abilities and essence of his fallen comrades, he wouldn't have left behind a seedling of disaster. To avoid repeating history, Leo is determined to achieve perfect control in this life. So, the first step in his journey is mastering aura, but he intends to do so on his own terms. Before he can delve further into his thoughts, a familiar voice calls out to him, pulling his attention away. As he turns over, he spots Celia Zerdinger. With a confident smirk, she comments on how he finally seems to have grasped the basics of training. While her words carry a hint of sarcasm, she goes on to offer him guidance in swordsmanship, if he's up for the challenge. Meanwhile, our boy has no idea who the hell she is, so she introduces herself as Celia Zerdinger, the world-class sword princess, if she has to be specific. With the introductions out of the way, Leo gets straight to the point. Although he's feeling quite honored that she thought about him, he has no intention of receiving any guidance from someone he considers less skilled than himself. Needless to say, the girl's annoyed to hear this because his remark comes off like he's trying to suggest that he's stronger than her. To which Leo clarifies that in a death match, she's probably stronger, since he can't use aura himself. However, sparring with only swordsmanship is a whole different game, and he's certain he can handle her like it's no big deal. Celia feels challenged by his statement, so she looks around and grabs one of the swords from the plethora available. She wants to prove that what he has is nothing more than misplaced confidence, and she plans to do that by defeating him in a duel. In her mind, even if Leo learns aura, there's no way he could possibly defeat her. She just wants to teach him a harsh lesson in reality. She further claims that if she wins during her week-long stay here, he will become her servant. Leo isn't fazed at all by the term she's thrown at him, and in response, he asks what if he wins. To make things fair, she throws back that if he wins, she'll become his servant instead. Now that the bet is set, Leo grabs a practice sword and dives right into the sparring session. He tries to strike her with his unexpectedly impressive speed, but she easily outmaneuvers him. However, she can't help but notice that his speed is actually quite concerningly good. However, Celia is sure that this won't be enough for him to win. As they both charge at each other again, Leo lands a brutally heavy strike, and the sheer strength behind it overwhelms her. She quickly steps back as the force becomes too much to handle, and when Leo's sword collides with the ground, it shatters instantly. But he doesn't stop there. He charges at her once more. The once arrogant lady is already starting to regret challenging Leo, and she's certain she can't possibly block the incoming strike. So she braces herself and takes the hit head-on. But, to everyone's surprise, she didn't take any damage, because she had used an aura armor in the last moments, even though this wasn't part of the spar, because this spar was purely meant to be about swordsmanship. This arrogant piece of work doesn't own up to the fact that she couldn't dodge his attack. Instead, she makes an excuse, claiming it was just a reflex. But Leo declares that he's already won, and it doesn't matter. Of course, this leaves her in disbelief, as she's not ready to hand him the victory that easily. Leo had expected this, so he throws off the magic weight bracelets he was wearing to hold off his physical strength. In the next hit, he literally shatters her barrier, leaving the girl completely boggled. Meanwhile, Leo shows her no mercy and gives her a taste of his full strength. Later in the courtyard, as Leo walks around, he stumbles across his mother, who promptly introduces him to his uncle Zeiss. Leo quickly bows his head to pay his respects, and Zeiss reciprocates, introducing himself as well. The two gentlemen then shake hands. His mother then asks if he's met Celia yet, to which Leo recalls how she had fainted after their battle due to fear. Before Leo can explain to her what happened, a knight approaches Zeiss with a report regarding the lady. Zeiss is fascinated to learn that Leo defeated Celia with a body that hasn't even learned aura yet. He personally expresses his admiration for Leo, saying it's nothing short of impressive. But Leo claims that she just underestimated him. Zeiss then questions what Celia lost in the bet, to which Leo happily responds that the loser was supposed to become the servant of the winner, so basically, Celia is his maid for the next week. As much as Zeiss dislikes this idea, he understands the importance of keeping one's word. Still, he makes it clear that Celia is from the Zerdinger house, so he can't possibly order her around to do maid's work. He hopes Leo will rescind the promise, and in exchange, he offers to personally reward our boy with something far more valuable. But Leo refuses the offer right away. He lets his uncle know that this was a wager between Celia and him, and as long as she retains the Zerdinger name, she needs to take responsibility. The uncle then questions him if he's also willing to let go of the opportunity to learn the Zerdinger's aura breathing method. Leo once again responds with a sassy jab. He believes that an aura breathing method given with the objective of preventing a niece from being humiliated holds no value in being learned. Since Zeiss has no other way around this predicament, he decides to get a little offensive. He questions the boy directly, reminding him that he just declared he would use the direct lineage of the Zerdingers as a servant, and that the Zerdinger aura breathing method is worthless. Leo remains unhinged and unafraid of the consequences about to surround him, simply claiming that what his uncle just said is indeed true. Out of the blue, Uncle's mood softens, and he politely questions our boy if he does not think that what he just declared is impudent and impolite. Leo once again makes it clear that he had no intention of insulting the Zerdingers. He claims that if he were being given the aura breathing technique as a reward for defeating Celia, he would have gladly accepted it. However, he has no intention of accepting it as a bribe just so she can escape the consequences of her loss. You see, if his uncle doesn't want to recognize Celia's defeat, it means they believe she is better than him and simply lost the duel by mistake. But Leo makes it clear that even if Celia had sparred against him in earnest, he still would have won. This leaves Leo's mother even prouder. Her brother is equally fascinated to hear such judgment from Leo. The fact that this kid rejected the offer because he didn't like the way his uncle behaved only highlights how outstanding a child he is. He wishes that a child like this were a Zerdinger. Zeiss then gestures to his knights and orders them to send Celia to the maid's quarters. He turns to Leo and grants him the right to address his uncle without any honorary titles. After that short conversation, Leo parts ways, and Zeiss turns to his elder sister, proudly telling her that once he gets back home, he'll make sure to convince their elder brother so they can teach Leo the mighty technique, Phoenix Breath. Later, the scene switches to Leo's room. The first thing we notice is Celia's totally embarrassed face. She's going bonkers with embarrassment as she claims herself as Celia the maid, who will be in charge of Leo for the next week. Leo is literally enjoying the heck out of it when she calls him like that. Who could have imagined that her usual fancy style would actually suit plain maid clothes so well? And this dress just looks like fire on her. Celia seems annoyed by the way he's praising her, as she knows all too well how beautiful she is. Leo apologizes, as he wasn't intending to offend her with his words, but he admits that he had a certain friend who praised beauty way too much, and that habit must have rubbed off on him. He recalls how that particular friend used to say that the beauty of eternity is unparalleled, and if peace ever returns to this world, he'll spend the rest of his life spreading beauty to everyone. The friend he's talking about is none other than the dwarven master smith, Dweno. Suddenly, Celia's eyes take note of the book Leo is reading, and she curiously inquires about it. Leo explains that he used to read it a lot when he was younger. It's the book known as The Great Hero of the Beginning. Celia remembers how she used to read this book when she was literally 5 years old. Seeing how much he likes this particular book, she walks over to the bookshelf and pulls out another one, mentioning that there are a lot of books about Kyle. In response, Leo claims that many of the great achievements in history are difficult to attribute to any single hero. He believes that many of these accomplishments, which are attributed to one hero, might actually be the result of the collective actions of multiple heroes over time. In short, he is trying to imply that Kyle's achievements have also been attributed to other heroes. But Celia dismisses such thoughts, claiming that Kyle was probably a scammer who tried to take credit for the achievements of the great heroes. At least, that's what most people think. And of course, she's one of them. Naturally, Leo isn't thrilled to hear that all people consider Kyle a phony scammer with zero contributions to the world. He then pushes aside all the talk about Kyle and decides it's time for breakfast before starting his training. Celia quickly gets into character, and just like any maid would, she humbly asks her young master if she could train with him. Outwardly, she's all pleasant and polite, but inwardly, the girl feels a lot of toxic thoughts toward him. Still, she has to play along because she wants to uncover the secret behind his strength. Leo promptly starts walking toward the training hall to fulfill her request. A while later, we see an exhausted Celia on her knees, breathing heavily. After this first round, Leo gives his feedback. During fighting, when her stamina reaches its limit, her reaction speed slows, and more gaps appear between her movements. And when that happens, she leaves herself open, and the same happens with her right now. But Celia isn't sure that abusing her body like this is actually helpful for training. Leo responds positively, because he thinks that young people these days are just too weak. You see, compared to the past, aura techniques have developed considerably, and that must be why people stopped caring about body training as much. Aura allows one to enhance their body strength, and if you train your body, the aura is also enhanced as well. The girl simply doesn't want to be labeled as weak, so she gathers her guts and stands up for another round. Before diving in, she warns Leo that he better stop underestimating her. But her reckless charge backfires when Leo just flings her away with one swing, and she crashes to the ground. At this point, she's just frustrated after taking one humiliating defeat after another. Leo then offers her a bracelet, which she quickly extends her hands to grab. Little does she know this bracelet is imbued with weight magic, making it insanely heavy. Meanwhile, Leo flashes a sinister smile as he reveals his sinister intentions. He apparently plans to make her train while she wears this bracelet from this point onward. The next day, we see Zeiss also watching them both train. After seeing how much Celia is struggling, the uncle is sure this is going to be a good experience for her. Before going to Lumen, it might be good for her pride to crumble at least once. He then calls out to Leo and gives him some good news that he's thinking of asking the Patriarch to allow him to inherit Phoenix Breath. The mention of Phoenix Breath catches Leo off guard because, as far as he can recall, that's basically the Zerdinger family's origin for the aura technique. He's heard that only people who are recognized within the family can inherit it. Celia also raises her opinion that her father won't allow it that easily. But it looks like Zeiss has figured this much out already. He proposes a condition to Leo. If he passes the Lumeni entrance examination, he'll be allowed to learn the technique. Of course, this remark doesn't sit well with Celia because, in her eyes, Leo is just a brat who can't even use aura. And since the Lumine entrance examination consists of actual fights, it's going to be very dangerous for him. Well, Leo doesn't shy away from claiming that he doesn't have any real fight experience. But we all know that's only the case if he doesn't take his previous life into account. Zeiss awaits for Leo's opinion, to which our boy quickly agrees, as long as his parents are okay with this decision. A week passes by and the day of the Lumine entrance examination finally arrives. When they see the prominent figure of Celia Zerdinger among the participating students, everyone is in awe. Meanwhile, Celia throws a jab at Leo, asking if he's feeling nervous. It looks like after spending so much time being a personal maid, Celia has lost herself in the character because she's still referring to Leo with the master title. As they stand there, Gullivan's unmistakable voice catches their attention. He's actually here to see Celia, but he's a little shocked when he notices that Leo is with her. This piece of work throws shade at Leo since he believes that our boy does not belong here, since he doesn't even know how to use aura. At the same time, he tries to greet Celia politely. However, the poor guy is totally ignored by the duo like he doesn't even exist. He gets awkward and tries to remind Celia that he's Gullivan Tratton and he had greeted her when they met last time. But to Gullivan's dismay, Celia doesn't recognize his name and quickly grabs Leo's hand in order to leave the scene. Suddenly, they're called by someone else. It's actually two siblings gracing the scene. The taller one is Abad Llewellyn, hailing from the Llewellyn family, and he's 16 years old. And the shorter girl beside her is Chelsea Llewellyn, 14 years old, and she shares the same family name. While Celia seems to recognize these two, Leo has no clue who they are. Celia explains that they're the Llewellyn siblings, hailing from the same heroic lineage of the Lordran Empire, the children of the Llewellyn family. Celia is particularly fired up because she's not thrilled to see these two. She warns Leo that the Llewellyn siblings will be partaking in the exam with them, so they absolutely can't lose to them. She definitely can't have the Zerdinger clan lose to the Llewellyn family. But this isn't really Leo's concern, after all, he's from the Plov family, not Zerdinger. Anyway, when the two greet Celia, she doesn't have any reason to decline their greetings and reciprocates the gesture. She also makes sure to introduce Leo from House Plov, a noble family within the kingdom of Dalad. Hearing that Leo doesn't have a fancy title attached to his name, Abad Llewellyn dismisses him as insignificant. The two siblings promptly twirl around and proceed to walk away, throwing out the warning that they'll surely be in the top spot. It goes without saying that Celia doesn't like the Llewellyn siblings' guts, and is looking forward to thoroughly crushing them in the upcoming trials. Suddenly, someone representing Lumine Academy steps onto the podium, immediately commanding the attention of everyone present. The man introduces himself as Albi Zeron, a professor at Lumine Academy. While Celia's expression shifts to one of shock upon seeing this prestigious figure, Leo seems unimpressed, mostly because he has no idea who this guy is. Celia is visibly annoyed that Leo doesn't even recognize someone of Albi's stature. She takes the opportunity to educate him and explains that Albi Zeron is listed in the Hero Record, a distinguished list of individuals considered heroes of the current era. Leo takes a moment to observe the professor carefully and notices something peculiar: immense mana concentrated in Albi's left eye. Professor Albi then proceeds to address the gathered students. He begins to explain the format of the entrance examination. According to Albi, the trials involve two main components: one-on-one combat and monster subjugation. Traditionally, participants would take turns completing these tasks. However, Albi immediately clarifies that he finds such methods tedious and wastes no time proving his point. In an instant, he burns the sheet of paper he was holding, as if discarding the conventional exam structure entirely. And up next, he pulls out a thick, ancient-looking book. As he opens it, the teacher summons forth the first chapter titled Prologue, The Wild Forest. In that moment, a massive enchantment circle begins to glow under the feet of the entire student body. The scene is set, and no one has a clue what the professor intends to do next. But one thing becomes crystal clear, which is that Albi Zeron despises inefficiency. He declares that he's combining all the trials into one seamless challenge and will move forward at once. To understand what's happening, we learn that the hero record isn't just a historical record. Its real value lies in its ability to manifest the hero's world, which contains the experiences of past heroes. By accessing this world, one can inherit the power of a previous hero. Simply put, it's almost like a hero training system. All the students have been transported into this hero's world, known as the Wild Forest. The professor announces that their one and only objective is to survive. Whether they join forces or eliminate each other, they can do whatever it takes to stay alive. Those who want to quit can break the orb they're holding and return. That's all there is to it. After looking around for a few minutes, it doesn't take our boy long to recognize the place. It looks exactly as he remembers. You see, this used to be an elven forest before it was taken over by the Witch Queen, Silatna. Meanwhile, some students just want to go back, especially since they think that this place is nothing more than an illusion. But our boy doesn't share the same thoughts. As far as he can tell, while this world might have come from the examiner's memories, everything that is going to happen here will be real. The deadly hazards here could seriously kill someone if they're not careful enough. With the mention of danger, Leo notices someone's presence and is soon attacked by an arrow that literally shatters the ground beneath him upon impact. Thankfully, he's safe, but when he looks in the direction of the arrow's source, he sees it's the girl from the Llewellyn family, Chelsea. It looks like she has mistaken him for a member of the Zerdinger family, and because of that, she's determined to eliminate him. But Leo quickly makes it clear that he's a member of the Plav family. Chelsea, however, becomes more aggressive, thinking he's lying since she had seen him with Celia earlier. Without hesitation, she casts her magic Windsickle. Leo seems impressed as he watches her chant a spell that didn't exist in his past life, but he also notices that the basics of this spell are not much different. Meanwhile, Chelsea is frustrated by how calm and composed he is while facing her. To shake him up, she unleashes her impressive ability at him, but Leo just effortlessly blocks it with a single swing of his sword, and the mana blade she sent at him simply falls away. This leaves Chelsea unsettled. From what she can tell, he didn't even use aura, so how has he blocked her attack so easily? Our boy just rubs salt in her bruised ego by casually claiming that her attack was too simple. He invites her to form an alliance as it will be beneficial for her. He reminds her that the one who survives the longest earns the most points, so as a sorceress, she should at least try to pass one test before getting eliminated. I don't even have to tell you what her response is. She quickly fires back and boasts that she is not your typical sorcerer, she's a battle mage. She's offended by his comment where he called her attack simple. Feeling the sting of his words, she channels all her power to crush him on the spot, just so she can prove she's not the weakling he thinks she is. But all of her attacks end up being pointless, as Leo isn't even standing in the direction where the blades are heading. What's worse is that she can't feel a trace of mana anywhere, so she can't even spot him where he is. But her eyes soon meet Leo, who's right in front of her with his fist balled up. We don't get to see if that punch lands on her terrified face or not, but one thing is clear. Her knees lose the strength to hold her up, which is a clear sign of victory for our boy. Leo, however, once again reminds her that the offer to join forces is still on the table if she changes her mind. Before we can hear her response, the scene cuts to the faculty of Luminae Academy, who are watching the show through a digital window. They're thrilled to see that the battle is finally heating up. Back to Chelsea. It looks like she's getting no mercy. Leo has tied her to a tree trunk, and the look on his face clearly shows he's not exactly having good intentions for this poor girl. He also makes sure to start a small bonfire since the night is settling in. The fire intensifies, and flames begin to crawl toward the damsel in distress tied to the log. Seeing the flames causes her to panic, but she could avoid this fate if she agrees to cooperate with Leo. But well, this lady is as stubborn as they come and refuses outright. She makes it clear she needs no one to ally with her except for her brother. She tries to use some wind magic, but her efforts prove futile because Leo has already placed a skill that restricts magic. Though inwardly, he reveals to us that he doesn't have enough mana to maintain this skill, so it won't last much longer. The lady finally relents, thinking she doesn't need magic to get herself out of this mess. But that's exactly why Leo is here. He's more than ready to keep a close watch to make sure she's not trying anything tricky. Without hesitation, he cranks up the intensity of the fire, and soon the flames begin to catch on her. Even her clothes start to burn. Well, that's the last straw. The girl finally concedes and agrees to form an alliance with him. But of course, a few words aren't enough to convince Leo. He tells her to swear on her family's name. The girl quickly fulfills his demand, swearing on the Llewellyn family name that she will cooperate. Finally, Leo releases the ropes that were holding her, but before she can fall into the scorching flames, he cradles her in his arms. The scene transitions back to the teachers, who are diligently watching the students perform. So far, Albi Zeron has not seen a student who can live up to his standards. To think that most of the students chose to compete and fight each other seems utterly foolish and ridiculous. The only ones showing real strength to the point where it's noticeable are Celia Zerdinger and Abad Llewellyn, who are working closely together. At least this gives him some reassurance that there is still hope for the students. Then, his attention shifts to Leo and Chelsea, who are also working together. His eyes are particularly fixated on Leo. Although the fire stunt he pulled on Chelsea was pretty immature, getting Chelsea Llewellyn to cooperate at least earns him a passing grade in Albi's eyes, especially since he doesn't possess the power or grace of Celia and Abad. However, it seems this is where the teacher is utterly wrong, because our boy took down Celia without even breaking a sweat. Regardless, Albi Zeron considers Leo an unexpected dark horse in this competition. After slashing down a few monsters in their path, both Leo and Chelsea decide to move forward. It seems that Chelsea has finally started to realize that forming an alliance with Leo wasn't such a terrible decision after all. She then asks him what aura he's using, as she hasn't detected any mana from it. To her surprise, Leo casually drops the bombshell that he doesn't even know how to use aura. Unsurprisingly, this shocks and surprises her. While they're going back and forth, a monster is lurking behind the bushes, keeping a close eye on them. But Chelsea quickly notices the presence of the monster and fires at it instantly. Not gonna lie, this attack was way too overpowered for such a feeble monster. Even Leo admits that she does indeed have impressive strength, but the way she uses it is completely wrong. Suddenly, Leo senses something strange and tells her to halt her movements. He's noticed something odd in the sand. When he crouches down, he notices dry ground and decayed dead bodies of people. Out of the blue, an explosion erupts, but Leo quickly jumps away while carrying Chelsea in his arms. The sneaky bastards who had set the trap finally emerge from hiding. It turns out it's Gullivan and his partners. We all know that he's got beef with Leo, so it's no surprise he's here to specifically target him. He commands one of his companions to charge, and the poor fool obeys without hesitation. Unfortunately for him, he's greeted with a jaw-breaking blow from Leo, leaving him sprawled out on the ground. Leo stands tall, exuding total GigaChad energy, and calmly tells Chelsea to just watch his back. For a moment, Chelsea is startled, seeing how effortlessly he has saved her twice in a row. But she quickly gets up and positions herself behind him, ready to face the remaining goons. Meanwhile, Gullivan does what he does best, runs for his pathetic life. He abandons his crew, desperately trying to put as much distance between himself and Leo as possible. The only thought crossing through his mind is to find a partner fast. As fate would have it, Celia spots him from a distance. Instead of chasing him, she calmly walks into the direction he's running from. When they finally arrive at the scene, what they see is jaw-dropping. The area is littered with monster corpses and the bodies of students who had tried and failed to take them on. Naturally, Chelsea lights up at finally being reunited with her brother. Meanwhile, Celia throws shade at Leo, demanding to know what in the world he's doing with Chelsea. Leo proudly claims that it was his decision to form an alliance with her. Celia, however, finds it hard to believe. She would rather believe him if he had claimed to see a cockroach doing backflips than believe he managed to convince Chelsea the stubborn goat to form an alliance. To this, Leo casually and sinisterly claims that he simply convinced her. His wicked grin unsettles even Celia, who begins to wonder what exactly he might have done to convince her. Anyhow, our boy moves to help the students he just knocked out back to their feet. Seeing this, Abad questions why Leo is helping their opponents. Our boy quickly clears the air that there's no need to fight among themselves. Instead, sticking together to defeat the challenges of this world is a much better idea than fighting selfishly. Since Abad and the others seem clueless about what challenge he is talking about, Leo draws their attention to the nearby decayed corpses, hinting at a bigger issue. Seeing the corpses on the ground, one of the students comments that it looks like their moisture has been drained. Leo clarifies that this isn't the only odd thing here. He points out how this place, out of nowhere, seems completely devoid of any monster presence. It's as if the monsters are afraid of something, like a high-tier monster has appeared and scared off the others in the forest. As the pieces start falling into place, Abad finally understands what's going on. As far as his understanding goes, Hero Albi's first feat was defeating a high-tier monster. Just then, they all hear a massive roar in the distance, the sound of something close and ominous stirring deep in the forest. The roar fills the air with tension, a clear sign that the monster has finally decided to reveal itself. Meanwhile, Gullivan stumbles through the forest alone, holding a torch in his hand. He looks terrified, and despite being deep in trouble, his feeble mind is more focused on getting revenge from our boy than on survival. Suddenly, he notices a corpse at his feet, and there is also something behind this veil of darkness that causes him to trip and fall. The thing he saw in the dark is a giant monster. The monster looks like a giant spider, and it seems to be quite hungry. By now, it's clear that Gullivan is as good as dead. Let's explore what's happening with Professor Albi and the students. It turns out that a staggering 500 students all failed the exam. The real problem is the fact that the selection process requires the selection of at least 100 students, but there are only 50 of them still left in the test. Instead of forcing himself to pick, the professor believes that he's only going to select suitable candidates that meet his expectations. After all, the headmaster put him in charge knowing that he would pick the cream of the crop. Albi is a believer in discovering heroes in the time of great difficulty. He has gained an interest over Leo Plov, a dark horse with unexpected talent. The question is, will this dark horse be able to overcome the harsh exam? Going back to the scene of the students in the exam, they're fast on their feet and have trouble navigating because of the dark atmosphere. Celia illuminates her blade and claims that she's seen something up ahead. Her sword's red shimmer reveals the face of the terrifying spider who is currently devouring its prey. It strikes fear into their hearts as Abad rushes to use a mage spell to take down the threat. However, Leo is quick to stop him and advises Gullivan to break the crystal. Of course, Gullivan is out here becoming breakfast between the spider's teeth, so he can hardly move. He decides to smash the blue crystal, sending a wave of electricity inside the creature's mouth. With their preparations ready, Abad charges his Windfang spell and releases it upon the menacing creature. His attack manages to wound the monster, but fails to deal the killing blow. The four of them are horrified to comprehend the level of threat they're up against. This creepy crawly is the Spider Princess Tarantula, and she's not cute. One student foolishly lunges in with the hopes of a melee attack. He's humbled too soon with a single strike to his body, sending him crashing to the ground. Next up is Celia, who is arrogantly assuming that she'll end the fight with a single attack. Activating the Prominence spell, she releases a sharp yet destructive beam of red, piercing the creature's body and sending it waves of pain. However, the spider is as durable as a tank and quickly recovers, making Celia's approach useless as well. Abad uses this moment to talk her down, claiming that a mage and a knight's destructive power is incomparable. He releases a wind spell, Raphael, to slice the spider in an endless spiral. However, by the end of his attack, he's terrified to find the creature alive and well, staring him down. Sensing that her brother is in imminent danger, Chelsea casts her Windbreaker magic to help him out. Still, Abad suffers a cut from the spider's claw, though his sister's attack cushions the blow with her magic. She comes to check on him after he barely made it without losing an arm. They've tried everything against this monster, but its immensely fast regeneration proves them useless. Despair is setting in their hearts as the Queen Tarantula approaches to finish them. Leo comes in and explains that this creature is the daughter of Salatna. She was a deadly monster within Erebos' army, responsible for incinerating the elf forest. What's more, Leo reflects that the mana he detected in Professor Alby's left eye contains signs of the Fairy King's mana. The tarantula ruled over the cursed wild forest. Not only did she annihilate the forest belonging to the elves, but she also ate the most reliable comrade of the Fairy King who rebelled against her. At the time, Leo believed that Luna responsibly defeated Tarantula, but it turns out the reality is different. The tarantula survived thanks to devouring the Fairy King's assistant, who possessed the source of infinite life energy in the form of an invaluable artifact, none other than the Ring of Life. Abad is as stubborn as a log, and thinks that it's only right for him to take out the monster if it's a part of the exam. Both he and Celia decide to unleash consecutive strikes in the hopes of defeating the creature on their own. The tarantula endures their wrath, but Leo thinks it's all useless since the creature will just keep regenerating to no end. In fact, they'll be the ones to run out of mana first. In a last-ditch effort, Celia asks for his opinion on how they should handle the monster. Leo explains that it requires the teamwork of two, but his suggestion is immediately met with disagreement by Abad, who is selfishly hoping to overcome the monster on his own. The same goes for Celia too. With both of them acting like children, our boy comes and gives them a dear reality check, that if they don't work together to defeat the monster, they will all fail. His words finally get through. Abad amuses the possibility of them working together, and thinks that it will still consume some time to initiate a joint strike that kills the creature in one go. The thing is, since no one apart from them can stall the monster, it's going to be hard. Deciding to step up and contribute in their struggle, Leo expresses that he can buy some time for them. Celia thinks he's become a nutcase and reminds our boy that he can't even use aura yet. Leo confirms that he can hold out no longer than 5 minutes for them in his state. The magician Abad is afraid that their coordinated attack might still fail by then. However, Leo is absolutely certain that it will work and picks up a weapon from the ground. He adds that both fire and wind elements share a great affinity with each other, so it will be sufficient. Despite their differences, the Sword Princess and the Great Magician become allies, while Leo looks up to the ugly spider as a good challenge and a reminder of his past life. The fight begins with our boy impressively slicing off the creature's limb with a sharp swing, shocking the other two students. He goes on to annihilate the creature's face, and finds himself satisfied to find the monster of Tartaros. Exploring a flashback of the past, we see an elven child running in frightening tears. Unfortunately, the monster Tartaros captures him with its webbing. With the boy completely immobilized in the creature's net, there's just no chance of escaping anymore. The spider quickly arrives, ready to consume him whole. The boy begs for his mother's help and awaits impending doom, until one radiant being appears as a savior, a being of light that stops the creature from hurting the child. Luna felt infuriated with the creature wreaking havoc on her homeland, and going as far as to devour the contractor responsible for being the right-hand man of the elven forest. Luna releases a light attack aimed at the toothy creature. Her magic attack enveloped Tartaros, caging the creature before sending down a column of thunder. Luna wasn't expecting Erebos' army to have come and conquered the elven forest as well. At the time, Leo in his original life became responsible for freeing the kid, helping him escape the webbing net. Let's explore the current scene, where he's standing with an axe in hand, ready to buy time for his teammates. Still, he can't do much without his aura. Requesting Chelsea for help, Leo instructs her to use elemental magic, targeting him with her weapons. He evasively dodges a strike. Because of his immense speed, Chelsea is concerned that he might get caught up in the attack at this rate. However, Leo emphasizes that he's going to be just fine so long as she hurries up. Chelsea activates her magic, ready to mold any kind of weapon for him. Leo is fine with anything as long as it works. She manifests a weapon for him, while he guesses that she's preparing a scimitar and a bastard sword. With both weapons in hand, Leo unleashes his fury of slashes, cutting down on the spider. With each weapon breaking, Chelsea sends another one in his direction. He catches a dagger and a battle axe. Leo's shocking and overwhelming physical capabilities have shocked Chelsea to the core, so much so that she thinks he's an expert in martial arts. Even Abad can't help but think of him as strong. Still, it's not like he's invincible, as a sharp cut grazes his face. Leo thinks that if he can't even stop a stupid spider here and now, then his friends will never stop mocking him in the afterlife. He ramps up the intensity and cuts down the spider, requesting for another weapon. Unfortunately, Chelsea is all out of weapons in her disposal, which comes as a shock to him. Thankfully, however, Celia has already finished preparing her ultimate strike. She unleashes a roaring spiral of fire, incinerating the creature and defeating it at once. The ring of life drops is cleared from its body, and the monster is subjugated at last. Celia drops to the ground, thankful that everything is over now. Still, she can't help but focus on Leo's inhuman performance to hold back Tartaros for 5 minutes. Celia tries to praise him, but Chelsea is even faster with her words. She's become his #1 fan and thinks that his performance just now was comparable to the heroes of the legends. Leo doesn't think much of it, but this chick is going crazy for him as she wants to become a battle mage specialist. She pleads to learn from him. Funnily enough, Celia is hoping for Chelsea to receive exclusive training from him to get a taste of what suffering truly looks like. Anyway, our boy proceeds to grab the Ring of Life, which manifests Prince Silid as a fairy. He rekindles the prince's memory by saying his name. Hearing that, he goes back into the ring and accepting Silid as the Fairy King. This is all thanks to Professor Albie stumbling upon the Eye of Mana. The countdown for the testing ground is starting. Clearing Taste Stage has earned them the reward of the Fairy King's pledge. Before they're transferred, Leo recognizes someone from his past life. Fast forward to Kalian Badian, the principal of the academy, who is reviewing the exam report of the Western Territory. His assistant wonders how many students Albie ended up passing because of his strict requirements. The headmaster is rather surprised to see 40 students coming clean from the exam, which still isn't a high number. The headmaster isn't too disappointed because this dude thought he'd only see 10 students passing at most. This is still a great achievement. Celia and Abad seem to be the top candidates in his expectations. The headmaster heard that there was someone who was recommended as the representative for the year. It's shocking enough that Albie of all people recommended a student. They're almost certain it has to be either the Zerdinger or Llewellyn candidate. But as it turns out, this candidate is someone that no one's heard about before, a name that exceeds both Celia and Abad in performance. We come to Professor Albie's side of things, who is sharply assessing the boy's abilities. He recommended the student Leo Plav as the representative of the Night Division. The headmaster expresses shock for the professor to speak highly of this brilliant student. He specifically described this candidate to boast the talent of a hero. Now that the examination is all done and settled with, our boy is enjoying a hot sauna all to himself, relishing in its warmth. The reward for clearing the exam is the Fairy King's pledge. Now when it comes to clearing a hero's living world, there isn't supposed to be a typical reward, but strangely, he was given one as the exception. Leo doesn't understand why and sees his mother standing in front of him. She confronts the boy, questioning if he knows why she was expelled from the House of Zerdinger. In an effort to rescue an ally, she ended up losing control and unleashed the flames of Zerdinger. But she hasn't come to regret her decision, not even now. Fixating her attention to her only son, she wants the boy's incredible talent to be steered in the right direction. Also, she's most delighted to congratulate him on being accepted into the academy. Stepping foot in the glorious Lumeria city, the students are requested to collect their belongings before stepping foot outside the gate. Lumeria is the centerpiece of the world, and its most prized institution is the Lumine Academy. With Leo finally having arrived, his uncle comes to greet the boy and shares his congratulations for passing. Leo wonders what he's doing here, and learns that the House of Zerdinger is currently busy resolving an unending debate that has been going on for at least a month's time. He quizzes the boy, asking if he knows the reason for the conflict. Leo wonders if it has anything to do with the inheritance of the Phoenix Breath. His uncle confirms that it's exactly the case, and while his older sister isn't a part of the Zerdinger clan, Leo is inevitably her son. Then there's the fact that the elders of the clan are highly impressed by the boy's clearance of the Western exam, notorious for being extremely difficult. Leo is handed a special subspace key, which he decides to use at once by chanting a command. It unlocks access to a special book. His uncle then instructs him to stain the pages of the book with his blood. Leo follows his instructions, biting his thumb and releasing the splattering drops on the page. Now that he's shared his blood, he has access to the information inside the book. No one else will be able to know. And while it isn't easy to master the techniques of the Zerdingers, his uncle is confident in the boy's talent and believes he will get used to it in no time. With this, he officially welcomes him to the House of Zerdinger. After their meeting, Celia requests to meet Leo in an unknown location. Suddenly, a girl randomly bumps into him, causing the both of them to crash. Glasses girl over here quickly gathers her books, apologizing for her careless rushing. She goes away when Leo notices her card. He picks it up and learns about Chloe Muller, who is a freshman at the academy. Leo opens the door to find an annoyed Celia, who reminds him that they've got a lot of things to shop for and he's already late. He apologizes, as he unexpectedly ran into his uncle before coming here. Beaming with joy, Celia curiously asks what happened. To answer her burning question, the boy commands the flames of the Zerdinger family, questioning if he's doing things the right way. Seeing this, she's in utter disbelief. The confident Leo managed to master the secret technique in less than a month. His incredible achievement causes her to fall in shock and leaves her wondering if he's even human. Later that day, the Sword Princess and the Forgotten Hero are spotting a ship docking nearby. Professor Ain Elandieu introduces himself as the instructor of the night class. He wants the students to board the ship immediately, as they will be leaving for Lumen soon. The journey begins with the students leisurely enjoying their time. Leo and Celia look like a couple, which causes a confident young fellow to release a comment that gets on Celia's nerves. This an alchemist from the kingdom of Moira, and he's a merchant with everything to sell. He attempts to do business with the couple in case they need supplies at the school. Leo introduces himself by his student identity and explains that he belongs to the kingdom of Delad. Thomas is noticeably surprised to hear this, because that kingdom took the difficult Western exam. Leo wants to address the elephant in the room, as he's finding the whole setting a little too strange. It seems too peaceful, even though Celia thinks that this is the standard treatment the freshmen should receive after clearing the exam. The boy turns his attention to their instructor, while Thomas agrees with Celia's understanding of the situation. All of a sudden, the ship shakes as a gigantic tentacle rises from the ocean. It nearly crushes Thomas, while the rest of the students are begging for their instructor to intervene. Casually sipping his wine, their teacher mocks them for ever even asking for help. He reminds them that the students of the Lumen Academy are expected to perform their best in the time of danger, so this is a challenge for them to overcome on their own. They're up against the ugliest of the uglies. A giant kraken stares down at the students. Even in this tense situation, the Forgotten Hero maintains his composure and slices the creature's tentacle with his blade. Celia's also doing fine on her own. Experiencing the fiery attack of the Sword Princess, the kraken reacts with a water spray, causing Celia to get drenched. The monster grabs Thomas, who's shouting his mouth off. Seeing this, both Celia and Leo come rushing full speed to slice the creature down. With the alchemist's greed, he offers his shock. He was expecting the Sword Princess to do well on her own because of her reputation, but he wasn't expecting another student to be just as fierce. Poor Thomas nearly gets crushed by a frozen tentacle and shouts at the person who could have killed him just now. Chloe, the glasses girl that bumped into our boy, is commanding ice magic and holding the monster off on her own. She talks down on the alchemist, who is needlessly becoming a burden in the fight instead of staying behind. Thomas confesses that people like her don't give a damn about those weaker than them trying to help. With another piece of tentacle crushed, we get to see the dynamic duo of Abad and Chelsea rising to the scene. They're still not done with their rivalry between the two clans. Still, the battle mage has her eyes set on our boy despite being enemies. With numerous monsters in the lake teeming on their way to the academy, the instructor thinks this is the perfect welcoming party for the freshmen. Enjoying his wine, he comments on the top performers: Chen, Celia, Abad, Chloe, Walden, and finally Duran, Moira. The captains of each region are performing excellently against the threat. However, beyond them is a student that has overshadowed their performance. An unknown freshman with no commanding dominance in any region. His swordsmanship is the definition of perfection, and he's reacting as if he's predicting every attack. The instructor is glad that he's going to see the boy unleash his full potential in his classes. Anyway, the useless alchemist is quick to run out of his potions as they finally arrive at their destination. Hopping off from the ship, the instructor expects the students to get used to the monster treatment, since they're going to deal with it a lot. It's time to explore the glorious entrance hall. The Lumini Academy's training grounds are extraordinary. Many spectators are hoping for the freshmen to put on a good show. The entrance ceremony is soon to begin. The Night Division is grouped by their instructor, who wants the captains to come to the front of the lines. The headmaster of the academy oversees the announcement, expecting great things from the hero candidates of this year. Kalian emphasizes to the students that if they ever want to become strong heroes, they'll have to risk their lives and always be expected to surpass their limits. Slamming his fist to the ground, the headmaster believes that if they can't do the bare minimum of what he just mentioned, then they don't belong to the prestigious institution. And then a second later he melts into a grandpa, acting like he didn't just intimidate the crap out of them. Kalian points out and asks why they've all gone quiet all of a sudden. His radiant reputation and image as the brilliant swordmaster slowly gets tainted by the day. Next up is a speech from the freshman representative, a name that the first years are looking forward to. It's not Celia, Abad, Chloe, or anyone else. Only Leo Plav's name is chanted, coming as a shock to even him. He quickly turns to the professor and realizes that he must have recommended him. Leo approaches the podium and addresses the professors and seniors with his speech. While this is going on, many students are bickering about the talks of this unknown student. They don't know what happened or who even is. The speech comes to an exhausting end, as Leo Plav is inquired about his goals as the representative of the year. He realizes that their goal is to intentionally provoke the finishers behind him. Leo offers his words in a very polite and professional manner, drawing attention from the other instructors. They think it's going to be a very reserved ceremony, until our boy goes crazy and openly declares that he's ready to accept any of them challenging him for the position. This hostile and bold announcement provokes the top rankers, but Leo doesn't really care about who it is he has to go up against. With the announcement settled, the students go to their dormitories. From tomorrow, exploratory classes will elapse for 1 week. This is a special grace period for the students to take any class which will later help them decide 3 subjects to major in. The students are promptly advised to rest up so they don't face a first-day late class. Leo's room is designated right next to Thomas, who is excited for his first class tomorrow. They exchange a goodnight greeting and Leo collapses on his bed. His mind is busy wondering what he's supposed to accomplish in the academy. Seizing his place in the best institution, he desperately hopes to find his long-lost hero record. The next day at the cafeteria, Thomas wants to share a seat with our boy who doesn't really care and approves the request. Leo receives an annoyed visitor, someone he isn't familiar with. This guy is Duran from the Central Region, and he's here to confirm if the challenge he stated in the announcement carries any weight. Leo understands that his speech was provocative in its fullest. After all, it invited a stranger to take him on in an aggressive manner. Duran thinks he's some hotshot of the Central Region, but Leo simply doesn't give a flying fuck and continues drinking his fruit juice. Pissed for being taken lightly, Duran lashes out by releasing a thunderous kick, sending the table flying. However, Leo's inhuman speed helps him rearrange the ingredients and reform his perfect cheeseburger. This man is the definition of class, as he made a meal out of the occasion. Leo provokes him, stating that he just couldn't ignore free food to waste away like that. Duran, on the other hand, is in the mood to kill this guy with his every word. He thinks the freshman representative is much weaker than he is, which his ego can't stand. Intervening the fight, their instructor casually rests both his arms around the 2 students. He politely mentions their ranks as the representative as well as the captain of the region. The instructor is hoping they're prepared to receive due punishment for engaging in a fight on the first day. You can just see both their faces crying for help. Let's jump ahead and visit the first exploratory class of the night department. For some reason, Celia is concerned why Leo isn't around. He emerges at last, completely exhausted for breath. His condition invites Celia's attention, because she thinks he fought with someone. Leo decides not to say anything for the time being. Class is about to start. Ain introduces himself as the instructor of the first-year night classes. Thomas notices that Duran is on bad terms with Leo already, while their teacher Ain talks about the 3 main powers derived from mana. The first being magic energy, the second is soul energy, and finally we have aura. Of the 3, aura is deemed the most difficult to handle. Celia adds that it's because aura requires losing mana fluidity during the conversion process. Her answer is spot on, as magic and soul energy tend to use mana in its natural state. But aura, on the other hand, absorbs the mana and converts it to suit the body. He demonstrates what an aura looks like and wonders if any of them knows how to use the processed aura from their bodies. Collecting her thoughts, Celia fails to come up with a reasonable answer. The freshman representative breaks his silence and explains that utilizing an aura's power requires the burning of mana. He's reached the right conclusion, as pointed out by the instructor, which then makes him ask about the most crucial aspect of the process of burning mana. Leo quickly responds, stating that it is stamina. Impressed by the boy's understanding of aura, Ain asks if he's ever studied the concept before. Turns out he hasn't, which is yet again another impressive feat. A person who hasn't even studied aura somehow extensively managed to grasp its true essence. Deciding to put an end to the theoretical explanation, Ain thinks it's about time they do a little exercise. Using his aura, he casts a wave-like platform called the Aura Step. This fundamentally relies on concentrating one's aura power into their legs. Ain descends to the ground and excitedly mentions that the applications of aura are practically endless. Some of the other students experiment and spar with each other, while Celia teases our boy. She's ready to teach him how Aura Step works, so long as he calls her sister. Leo doesn't feel the critical need for her help, as he's fine with knowing the principles of aura. Noticing Duran on the side, the instructor thinks it's a good time to address the commotion scene in the cafeteria. Some students like Chelsea don't know what happened, and Thomas strokes her curiosity even more with his commentary. Both Leo and Duran are called to the front by the instructor. First, Ain confronts Duran and asks what ticked him off so much. After hearing Duran's dismissive reply, the instructor decides to offer the perfect suggestion. He wants the Central Region captain to square off against the freshman representative in a running competition, all to decide the student fit to lead the class. Ain outlines that both students are openly allowed to use their aura without any restrictions stopping them, which seems like the perfect advantage to Duran. The day of the competition is here. Thomas, being the expert businessman, is busy hosting a betting system. The first contestant is the genius of the House of Moira and the master of the lightning aura, Duran. Facing him is the dark horse without a special background. A man who leaped ahead even the captains of the regions and became the freshman representative, Leo Plov. The students are expecting great things from the freshman representative. After all, they're extremely underwhelmed to find that he can't even use a simple move like Aura Step. They all think his position is unwarranted, and someone like the captain of the Central Region is more fitting for the role of a representative. Realizing that it's the perfect moment to start, Ain lays out the rules. The first to hit the finish line will win, and their opponent will have to accept the results of the outcome without fail. The race is about to begin. Even Celia thinks this competition is a stretch for Leo to win. Duran specializes in speed, not to mention his blazing fast lightning aura. Even against those odds, Celia is hoping for Leo to subvert everyone's expectations by pulling the impossible. As soon as the professor yelled go, the racers blasted off. Duran Moira cloaked himself with a lightning aura, confident that his speed would leave Leo in the dust. With impeccable running form, our boy was unfazed by the weak trash talk near the starting line. As the crowd expected, it looks like the cool representative of the Central Region is going to make quick work of the track. On the other hand, the freshman representative is lagging behind. Leo started infusing a bit of aura into his feet to kick it up a notch. The audience quickly labeled him a bastard who scammed his way into getting the representative role. In the midst of the crowd, which unanimously opposed him, a lone flower is cheering on Leo. Chelsea Llewellyn's passionate shout of support stood out. Focused on crushing the opposition, Duran continuously lived up to his family's signature attribute. He really is lightning fast. Seeing him cross the halfway point in such an inhumanly short amount of time got Carr worrying about his buddy. It seems like Leo will be on the losing end if he doesn't step it up. So, the young man looked around the track. Much to everyone's surprise, he did not push to go faster but decelerated instead. Once his momentum was dead, Leo started running out of the track and into the walls. While it's true that Celia Zerdinger believes in him, there's just no logical explanation for his actions. He looks like an idiot. As everyone watching was puzzled, confused, and lost, Leo was focused on increasing the aura density in his feet. With multiple successive inhuman jumps, he fully went off track into the grass and finally leaped up into the stands. He turned around and watched nonchalantly as Duran stretched his lead with consistent speed. Leo's aura density reached its peak, the fiery force in his feet cracking the stands he was standing on. With one powerful leap, he launched himself back into the track with immense momentum. It was so staggeringly impactful that the jump left a small explosion in his wake, distracting Duran for a moment. From that explosion, Leo came lifting off like a red meteor blazing through the rest of the track. The cheeky devil even taunted his opponent as he flew past Duran, calling the arrogant brat a slowpoke. The speeding meteor quickly reached the finish line. His graceful landing was a sight to behold. Duran watched a few meters away, dumbfounded. His lightning cloak has been banished. This is a clear and utter L. Leo craned his head back and confidently smiled. He won, but the damage in the stands was quite heavy. It was worth it, though. The crowd, who was talking smack just a second ago, was bewildered. They knew that whatever they just saw was no joke. As far as they know, Duran is the fastest among first-year students. To think that anyone would beat him is just absurd. Moreover, he lost to a kid who hasn't properly learned aura yet. Among everyone in the crowd, one of the few that caught what Leo truly did was Celia. She knew that he didn't use aura step. What he showed was a full-blown phoenix step. Since Leo won, Carr and Chelsea were brimming with joy, full of compliments for their friend. The professor quietly deliberated what he had just seen. Duran used his specialty, lightning aura, and increased his speed. That was already expected, but the speed that the boy displayed was still mind-blowing. Meanwhile, Leo Plov was significantly slower in the traditional sense, but he was far better at handling aura. He gathered and focused his fire aura on his feet to blast off. He created a single formidable aura step in the process of doing so. It was a flawless application of a simple concept. Being the sportsman that he is, Leo came up to Duran and offered his hand while telling him that it was a good match. He even admitted that if this was a long-distance race, the results would have been different. Still salty about his loss, The brat refused to shake his hand, and even bumped his shoulder out of the way. The professor is positive that among the current generation of disciples they have, a formidable hero might finally be born again. As soon as Leo reached the corner of his friends, Chelsea immediately showered him with compliments. He was so cool that she expressed her desire to train with him. Carr asks Celia why Chelsea is so into Leo and not him when the answer is so blatantly obvious. Since the class was over, Carr invited everyone to the cafe, even offering to treat everyone. Leo apologized as he couldn't tag along for leisure. Without saying another word, he quietly walked away from his clique. When asked where he was going, he simply answered that he was going to listen in on summoning classes. Confused, his friends asked why a night student would sit down in a summoning class. As usual, the reason is for research purposes. There's still something Leo can't wrap his head around. Why did the Fairy King give him the pledge as a reward? As far as he knows, the rewards of the hero's world are connected to the world owner's power. The reward he received is seemingly related to summoning, but Professor Albie is a pure magician and not a summoner. By that logic, Leo should have received a magic-related ability. Furthermore, to make contact with a fair, one must go to Fairyland. Whatever reward he got won't be of use for now. While Leo was waiting at the site of the summoning classes, a familiar voice asked if he was also a summoning student. It turned out to be the Eastern captain and top scorer, Chen Xia. Unlike the other captain who just raced, this lady is polite, cheerful, and kind. They exchanged pleasantries, and she insisted that he just call her Xia from now on. She was sure that Leo was a student of the Night Division, so seeing that he also had an interest in summoning was very unexpected. He asserted that he's simply interested in spiritualism. If that's the case, then they are going to see each other more often in a lot of classes. When asked what spirit she made a contract with, Xia summoned a beautiful water sprite out of thin air. Unfortunately, Leo hasn't made a single contract yet. As kind as always, Xia insisted that if he ever needed help with spirit summoning, he should feel free to call her. Leo is not one to turn down help and connections. Then he made the mistake of asking a lady how old she was. Xia smiled and answered that she was 17 years old. She also knows that Leo is younger than her at just 15. In Leo's mind, he was thinking of how young Xia looked. She looks even younger than Chelsea. Sina noticed his brief pause and confronted him if he was thinking of something rude, which Liao denied. That's right, boys. Always deny. Anyway, she just came up to him to say that she was deeply impressed by his race against Duran. She was actually in the crowd while it was going down. The sight of him blazing through the track has been imprinted in her mind. With determination, she asked him to accept her challenge to one of these days. Amused, Leo smiled and didn't back down. After meeting all sorts of bombastic characters, it's nice to finally meet a normal person. And so, the Summoning Division's exploratory class has officially started. Right from the get-go, their venue was unusual. Instead of a classroom, they are out in the fields. A few notable figures are present. These two have faces and white hair, so they must be real characters instead of extras. Leo scanned the area and saw a very low number of students congregating. She already expected as much. Summoning isn't a popular choice after all. Just as he was wondering why the class was being held outdoors, the answer came flying down from the skies. A massive, scaly body with wings that covered the sun flew over the students' heads. The creature landed, displaying its fearsome figure for everyone to see. It was a black wyvern. Some of the students with paltry willpower lost strength in their knees as soon as they saw the beast. Then, the woman riding on top of the wyvern smiled and asserted that her wyvern seemed to have taken a liking to this class. She jumped off her mount and introduced herself as Yura Marin, the summoning teacher who's going to teach the freshmen for the entire school year. Yura is a grade A beauty with her long white hair, toned body, and devilish features. The hormonal students just wanted to become their teacher's summon at this point. Leo reckoned that if Pervy Dueno had been here, he would have lost his mind at the sight of a woman with a different type of charm than Luna and Lysinus. He would surely be inspired to make more cultured art. Going right into business, Miss Yura addressed her little greenhorns. The fact that they are in this prestigious program must mean that they have some talent in the field. The freshmen answered affirmatively. Miss Yura liked how confident they were. So they will be moving to the practice area immediately. She called in Carlo, the first-year summoning class associate professor, to bring out the griffins. Miss Yura explained that they would be riding together in groups of 2. They have enough griffins to accommodate everyone's asses. The problem is, this is everyone's first time handling something as finicky as a griffin. As soon as she heard a complaint, Miss Yura's eyes turned hostile as she asked if they wanted to listen to her lesson or not. Jumping on top of her black wyvern, she announced that those who think they can't ride a griffin should just quit and go back. Her scaly beast mirrored her intensity. It roared and flapped its wings, taking off while establishing dominance. While everyone was shaken, a long student stood proudly and unbothered. Associate Professor Carlo interjected lightly, telling the kids to hurry and follow the professor. Once they got over their initial fear and uncertainty, Most students found out that the griffins were gentler than they thought. Some of these four-legged birds are very tricky to deal with, though. It's just the luck of the draw. Leo and Zia partnered up for the activity. She politely asked if she could hold the reins, and Leo gladly gave way. And so the students were lifted off the ground 2 by 2. Those who adapted quickly caught up to the professor's pace, bypassing the sea by taking to the skies. They were not expecting to be allowed to do something so bold as to ride a griffin on the first day. As expected of Lumine's top-notch programs, everyone's uneasiness regarding the griffins is practically erased. Some students were even bickering as to who should hold the reins. Xia and Leo were breezing through the sky with Xia as the driver. She was a bit worried, but the griffin they got is a real sweetheart. But it's still best to be careful. Griffins are difficult to control for first-time riders. Seeing that everything was going swimmingly, Miss Yura decided to shake things up and pulled out a whistle. She blew on it with strength, emitting an imperceptible sound that only the griffins could hear. As soon as the four-legged birds heard the tune, it was as if something primal awakened inside of them. Their talons protruded in full display, and all of the birds started behaving erratically. The weak-willed students turned to the professor for help, not knowing that she's the reason why the beasts are going out of control. Miss Yura reckoned that those who can't even handle an out-of-control griffin should not call themselves a student of Lumine Academy. Even Zia, a reasonably experienced young summoner, was struggling with their bird. While she was trying to wrestle the bird with the reins, Leo grabbed her hand and waist to stabilize her seat. He warned her that griffins are prideful beasts. Trying to overpower them with strength will only make them act out even more. He was gentle with his touch. Leo finessed her fingers in subtle ways to keep the rampaging mount in control. Taking over from behind, he shifted gears and made the griffin fly faster than ever. They were going so quickly and steadily that they eventually passed the professor and her associate. Miss Yura praised his control over the beast. She turned to Carlo and confirmed if the first-year representative was an applicant for the Night Major. According to the records, that should be the case. He's riding so good that she wonders if he has a personal griffin back home. However, according to Carlo's records, Leo is not from a noble household that can afford one. That must mean he's operating purely on talent alone. It's still early in the class, but Miss Yura is optimistic that she might have just found a hidden little gem. After that sky debacle, every student eventually reached the island of summons, every summoning major's practice grounds. A lot of the kids were throwing up on the beach after such a nauseating wild ride. On the other hand, Leo is just roaming the white sandy beach in search of a suitable fruit. When he finally found one with the right size and ripeness, he motioned to pluck it off the tree and saw a burnt feather. His mind started racing with possibilities, but he kept it to himself for now. After grabbing the ripe fruit, he fed it to the griffin as a sign of gratitude for bringing them to the island safely. With everyone accounted for, Miss Yura called everyone to gather up. From now on, they will be taking a practical exam on the first day, no less. Some of these kids just wanted to check out the exploratory class period, but now they're facing an impromptu exam. Miss Yura explained that compared to the other two majors, the path summoners must walk goes much further. Everyone should already be aware of that. For summoning, just having control over mana is not nearly enough. In order to make a proper contract with a suitable spirit, one needs the proper spirit affinity. To command your summons adeptly, adequate taming ability is a necessity. The path is hard and complicated. That is why the number of summoner heroes is vastly lower than that of the other two traditional classes. However, compared to other heroes, summoners who rise to get the title accomplish much more than the vast majority. Great summoners have deeply etched their names in history. That is the allure of being a summoner. Every student here wishes to become that sort of legendary figure in their own right. Eliza Hergen, from the renowned summoner hero family of the North, the Hergen clan, stepped up to the challenge and asked the professor what sort of exam they must face. Miss Yura explained that, as the name suggests, the island of summons is full of beasts and spirits. Since a summon is considered a form of weapon for summoners, the exam will test every student's taming ability. With that in mind, the contents of the test are simple. They just have to tame a summon in the forest and bring it back to the beach. After taming and making a contract, they are free to keep the summons. The students erupted in celebration. It's not every day that they get an opportunity to tame their own beast. While everyone else is rabidly running into the woods, excited to find their new pets, Leo just calmly walks into the forest. Surprisingly, Eliza followed him from the entrance. The rumors of his victory over Duran have quickly spread. Seeing him in the summoner class, she can't help but say hi. The other prominent students in the class took note of this interaction. Leo waved Eliza off and nonchalantly insisted that he was just doing the best he could. Seeing him dismiss her like she's some random commoner infuriated Eliza. Observing her students from afar, Miss Yura can already see the key members of her freshman class. A few minutes later, quite a few students had already started the process of taming their chosen beasts. None of them caught Leo's attention, though. Some of the students noticed that the freshman representative was going a bit too deep into the forest. Some were praying for his downfall, thinking that he'd fail to tame a summon, receive a 0, and run back to being a barbaric knight major. Unbothered by all the hubbub, Leo followed the trail as deep as he could. His guiding light is the feather he saw from the orange tree earlier. A few minutes ago, its tip was burnt badly, but now it's back to pristine condition. He found a clearing in the middle of the woods, and after making sure that he wouldn't be interrupted, he summoned the Zerdinger fire inside him and scorched the feather into ashes. Feeling an oppressively burning sensation coming from behind, his suspicions were confirmed. Back in Leo's hometown, life had slowed down now that the kid had flown off the nest. Reina is cooking some Ghibli movie quality food outdoors. Even so, she's still worried about her little boy. It's technically his first day of school, so there should be no need to get so worried and riled up, right? If Reina could see what her boy was getting into, then she would know that getting worried was not unreasonable. She tried to assure herself that Leo would be fine. He's a strong boy. Meanwhile, that boy is being cooked by the most intense heat one can imagine. He's being surrounded by the fire from one of the 3 great summons, the legendary Phoenix. With a voice that commanded flames, the Phoenix was confused to see a mere child using the flame of Zerdinger. The legendary beast only showed up when smelling Reina's flame. Hearing his mother's name, Leo asked the Phoenix how he knew his mom. It seems like the Phoenix showed up just in time then. The legendary beast is surprisingly acquainted with Leo's mom. It asserted that it owed Reina a great debt. This is Farina, one of the 3 mystical summons, the elusive Phoenix. She properly introduced herself, giving Leo the respect worthy of Reina's blood. Leo Plov returned the respectful introduction with one of his own, and asked Farina to elaborate on her relationship with his mom. The Phoenix confessed that Leo's mom saved the life of Farina's summoner, Ellen Lunda. Hearing the name made him jump in fright. Ellen Lunda is a proper hero. The incident happened while Ellen was clearing a dungeon in Siren. She had lost all her comrades and was in danger of losing her own life at that time. Then, Reina Zerdinger came in scorching hot to save her. She was a dignified knight, but in the process of saving the hero, Reina lost her blazing aura. If it hadn't been for that event, Reina would have surely reached the coveted seat of the heroes. It's Leo's first time hearing the whole story, but his mother always said that she did not once regret what she did that fateful day. Farina laughed, knowing that Reina really was that kind of knight. Changing the subject, Leo asked why a legendary phoenix would be in Lumen. Unfortunately, she can't tell her the reason. Farina was also confused as to why a little knight would be on the Island of Summons. When he professed that he was also taking summoning lessons, Farina was prompted to take a closer look at the boy. After seeing such a rich aura inside of him, almost as though he's not a child, Farina roared in laughter, deeming their meeting as fate. She can finally repay the debt that she owes his mother. Farina urged Leo to reach his hand out and hold her flame. The fire danced around his palm and eventually took the shape of an egg. Inside was the child of a phoenix. Farina hopes that one day, when he becomes a great summoner, Leo will make a contract with her child. It's unfortunate that the summoner was arranged to receive the egg, but Farina prefers Leo. When the young man asked if it would be possible to hatch and tame it now, the phoenix almost dropped to the ground in surprise. Before she could stop him from trying to initiate the process, a fiery light had already appeared around the boy's body. Farina tried to warn him that it was far too early to do this. If things go wrong, he might even lose his life. With unshakable concentration, Leo reached the point of no return. Farina was forced to accept that his willingness to challenge the impossible without even flinching is a trait he got from his mother. All she can do is bid him luck. In the process of hatching the egg, it was as though it was only him and the fire inside it existed in the world. Leo reached his hand out, enamored by the beautiful blaze. As soon as his palm touched the little fire, it grew into an unstoppable wild flare. Leo panicked and pulled his hand away. The heat is starting to make it impossible to breathe. This is the caliber of Phoenix Flame. This trial must be a way for him to experience what the mythical beast goes through. As a result of burning their bodies to emit powerful flames, a phoenix must endure unbearable pain every day. They live with burning flesh for an eternity while continuously regenerating at a monstrous rate. Even if just a little, Leo can understand their pain now. So he stopped fighting the pain and accepted the fire. It swallowed him whole as he joined the phoenix in its pain. The blaze reached its tipping point, rampaging all around his body. Suddenly, the egg in his hand started to crack and shatter. Leo opened his eyes, a newfound wisdom and acceptance for the agony imprinted in his soul. The fire that burned his flesh slowly coalesced around the egg, hastening the hatching process by a lot. Farina curiously asked if he had succeeded, and he confidently replied that he did. She smiled and stamped him into a true genius for pulling off such an insane move. If a phoenix tells you that you will be the world's greatest summoner, you better believe that shit. Before the egg can completely hatch, Farina is already congratulating the young man for making a successful contract. The eggshells burned to ashes, and what remained was an adorably tiny little chick named Fiora. Farina was so excited that she transformed into her human form as she entrusted her kid to Leo. By all accounts, Fiora just looks like an ordinary red chick. She's really cute, though. By midday, the majority of the students had already returned to the beach. Almost all of them brought back inoffensive summons that can be easily found in the outskirts of the woods. Miss Yura turned to her associate, Carlo, and asked how much time the rest of the students had left. Well, those who haven't returned only have 5 minutes remaining to do so. And as she expected, the only ones left were the 4 standouts she singled out. From deep in the woods, a rumbling can be heard. A giant fucking bear came running out, bulldozing the trees and everything on its way. On the back of the cuddly predator was none other than the scruffy Chen Xia. She managed to tame an aqua bear cub as a prospective knight. That is an impressive feat. Her entrance was quickly overshadowed by the shadow cast over her tamed beast. The quiet dude bagged a shadow crow as his summon, and is now aura farming by riding one of its talons all the way to the beach. Even famous summoner families would find taming a shadow crow difficult. He only managed to tame one but hasn't made a contract yet. He is up to par with Miss Yura's expectations, though. He has done more than enough. A minute later, the students started freaking out at the sight of a flawless white serpent crawling onto the beach with Eliza riding on top. Eliza haughtily asserted that she went ahead and contracted this Gorgon snake just because they don't have one in their family yet. She's just farming for the Pokedex. Carlo finally called time, signaling the end of the exam. Thankfully, the last student reached the beach at the last second. Compared to the previous grand entrances of the other 3, Leo just casually strolled onto the beach with a little chick nesting on his head. If his classmates inspired fear and awe, his image simply exudes cuteness. His dumbass mediocre classmates burst out laughing at the sight. They reckon that he tamed a chicken after sensing his incompetence in summoning. While everyone else was chortling, Miss Yura felt a chill running down her spine. She could not help but curse out. This son of a gun just brought in a phoenix for the first exam. By sunset, the freshman summoning class had officially ended, and the students were escorted back to the academy. While everyone else's day is over, Leo still has some business to discuss. He fixed his tie and knocked on the office door. A sweet voice beckoned him to come inside. As he opened the door, he was greeted by the sight of Professor Yura in her casual fit, the light of the sunset highlighting her features. She immediately set what she was doing aside and invited the young man to come and take a seat. Miss Yura confessed that today was the first time she had ever seen a baby phoenix. In fact, she didn't even know that there was a mystical summon on the Summoner Island. A freshman forming a contract with a phoenix is no joke. That is an unprecedented achievement in the entirety of the Academy's history. Miss Yura closed in on the young man, trapping him in the hair, and with an inquisitive look, she tells him that she knows what he really is. Leo nervously swallowed. Maybe he flexed too hard and unwittingly revealed his real identity. But his worries dissipated as soon as Miss Yura pulled him into a tight hug and called him an unprecedented summoning genius never seen before. While she wants to praise and acknowledge what he achieved, the professor thinks that they should keep his contract with Phoenix a secret for now. If such a massive piece of news is revealed, things will get very noisy very quickly. For now, she wants him to make sure to choose summoning as his main major the very day the exploratory classes end. In her eyes, this young man has the raw talent to become a summoning hero who will be remembered for ages. By the way, I know what you think, guys, but reality is harsh and there's no way for you to become her summon. The next day, Lumine Academy and its residents woke up to a beautiful morning. Chloe walked through the halls, still sleepy and yawning from not getting enough rest. Carr caught her yawning and teased her about her mouth being torn if she kept it up. Chloe feels and looks tired since she's been staying up late reading magic books. Seeing the girl that he bumped into a few days ago, Leo pulled out Chloe Mueller's ID from his pocket and returned it to the owner. She thanked the freshman representative for saving her the hassle of applying for a new one. What she found odd was the fact that Leo was also going to listen to magic classes. He reasoned that since they're still in the exploratory period, he might as well attend as many lectures as he can. Chloe, on the other hand, is only interested in magic, so the only classes she attends pertain to the subject. Carr quietly whispered to his buddy that this Chloe chick, this ice woman, was aiming for the top of the magic division. You see, Carr's mouth doesn't have volume control, so Chloe Mueller heard all of that. Carr immediately noticed the temperature drop as soon as she stared at him. Just as he was about to wriggle his way out of trouble and move to the back, a massive ice pillar stood in his way. It was a perfect crystallized pillar that nearly locked Carr inside the iceberg. With nowhere else to go, Chloe dragged him into the front seats to behave and pay attention to the class. The next second, another familiar face showed up in the lecture hall. 2 of them, in fact. Unsurprisingly, Abad and Chelsea Llewellyn, the prestigious mage family, are also present for the magic class. Suddenly, the door swung open and the atmosphere of the entire room shifted. As soon as he walked into the door, he effortlessly commanded everyone's attention. As he walked into the podium in front of the class, the girls started blushing and murmuring just how handsome their magic professor was. With a clean, slick-back look, a dapper tie, and an overall immaculate drip, Len Hors introduced himself as the first-year Magic Division professor. He brought with him a thick stack of paper. Before starting today's exploratory class, he wanted to do something drastic. With a flick of a finger, the stack of paper in his desk flew all over the room and eventually found themselves neatly arranged on top of each student's desk. For introduction, everyone will take a magic theory exam right from the get-go. Of course, everyone was surprised to find that they were being tested in magic theory before a single lecture. Professor Len Hors asserted that students who fail to meet certain standards will be banished from his class. Since all of them are Lumine students now, this much should be the standard. Upon finishing the exam, they are to hand the paper to his assistant, Anna. Contrary to the intensity of Professor Hors, Assistant Professor Anna is like a ball of sunshine. The one screwed over the most by this first-day exam is undoubtedly Leo. All it took was one look at the first question, and bro immediately knew he was cooked. He is clueless when it comes to current magic trends. The increasingly complex formulas in his paper are simply indecipherable to his eyes. While the clock ticks, every student tried their hardest to squeeze the last bit of their brain juice to answer the intricate questions. As grains of sand fall to the bottom of the hourglass, tensions rise. Their futures as magic heroes depend on this exam. When the time was up, the students discussed how surprisingly easy the exam was. But none of the best and the brightest managed to answer the last question. Compared to them, Leo was stressed. He only managed to answer one question even though he really tried his hardest. As he shakily submitted his paper, he regretted not learning more about modern magic before coming here. Thinking that it was hopeless, he immediately left. He couldn't stand staying in the lecture hall out of embarrassment. He reckoned that he should just study magic on his own time. For the past 100 years, magic has evolved by leaps and bounds. Magic that once required a perfect understanding of complex concepts can now be used just by memorizing mind-numbing activation conditions. Professor Hors quickly checked the papers. Bro didn't even need any supplies. He's raw dogging it with his fingers. Meanwhile, Leo concludes that magic's development towards memorization has worsened the overall level of magicians in current times. After checking the exams, the professor flexed his magical muscles to his students a little bit. He summoned a bright orb of light that illuminated the entire lecture hall with strange runes and other worldly concepts swimming around. This is the essence of the magic he personally crafted. From start to finish, he built this magical algorithm brick by brick. The goal of his class is to create students capable of researching and making their own brand of magic. That is also why he made them take a test on the first day of exploratory classes. There were 49 questions worth 1 point each, based on simple memorization of increasingly difficult concepts. The last question, worth 51 points, analyzes the true essence of magic. Professor Hors hopes that in the future, his students can become magicians capable of solving that last question. Chelsea breathes a sigh of relief. Now she can rest assured that no one else got the last question correctly. She didn't even know where to start solving it. She looked up and saw Leo's seat empty with his exam paper neatly laid down, thinking that he had given up. That bummed her out. It would have been nice to attend magic classes with him. After the professor's impassioned speech, his assistant came up to him and whispered something with urgency. Anna quietly told him that there was a student who solved the 50th question correctly, shocking the stern professor. The stoic and firm Len Hors vanished. He heartily laughed in front of the class upon hearing such good news. He asked his class who among them just made history as the first student to figure out the 50th question in one take and get a perfect score. Professor Hors was blushing and salivating at the thought of molding a generational magic genius. But Anna quickly corrected him and said that the student didn't get a perfect score. That was fine too. He didn't let that bother him. He reckoned that the student must have missed a few items due to spending so much time at the last part. Then Anna just dropped the bombshell with another whisper. The student who got it right only solved the last question and left the other 49 untouched. The professor demanded the name of the student, and Anna gave him Leo Plov's student file. Professor Hors called Leo's name out loud, ordering him to stand up. But it was too late. Even his friends didn't notice him slinking out of the classroom after shamefully submitting his work. To break the awkward silence in the room, Chelsea carefully raised her hand and explained that Leo left right after finishing the test. His test score is an utter anomaly. He technically scored the highest out of everyone else by solving the last part and nothing else. The subject of the magic class's uproar is already in the cafeteria, hanging out with Celia. He shared what just happened, and she laughed at his face for fucking up the exam. He got a cute baby bird in the summoning class, and he crashed out in the magic class. In Celia's opinion, Leo must realize that he's doing something wrong with his school life. She insisted that he should just focus on his swordsmanship. He's a knight major, after all. When asked if she would like to do some stamina training, she immediately changed the subject. Their friendly conversation was interrupted by a ghastly presence zooming in behind Leo. Professor Hors is fuming. He thinks this knight major kid just made fun of his class. He confronted him about leaving after just one question. He asked if the questions were so easy that they weren't worth answering. Leo stood up and respectfully cleared up the misunderstanding. He confessed that he genuinely thought he had zero chance of passing that exam. For him, every question except the last problem was way too hard, and he had no clue where to even start with any of them. He slyly explained that he studied magic on his own by reading old magic books, so he wasn't up to date with any of the modern ones. A thought started forming inside the professor's mind. He then picked up the young man off the floor like he was a cat or something. When he let go, Leo had never been so confused in his entire life. Meanwhile, the professor's eyes are gleaming with joy and possibilities as he urges Leo to follow him for a moment. Leo did not even get the chance to refuse or ask where they were going. Professor Hors grabbed his collar and dragged him out of the cafeteria like a child who had just found his new favorite toy. Celia was frozen in her seat. This was her first time seeing the Academy's professor of magical theory, and he made quite an eccentric impression. Poor Assistant Anna missed her boss by a few seconds. She failed to make sure that Len Hors didn't do anything strange. The poor lady didn't even have the chance to catch her breath as she tried to chase after the madman. The professor brought Leo to his office, started scribbling magic theory problems on his chalkboard, and asked the young man to solve them for him. He reckons that if the boy did not solve the final question out of pure luck, then he must already have his own established magic system in his mind. Professor Hors stood on the sidelines waiting for the young man to show him a new magic system through the solutions. But not even 10 seconds passed, and Leo had already finished writing his final answer on the board. Shocked and a little frightened, he asked if Leo had mentally solved all the questions he had presented. That's more or less what Leo did. The professor just hit the jackpot. After all these years of mediocrity, he finally found a seedling worth cultivating into the highest echelon of heroes. Professor Brojo Satoru is right outside, minding his own business and walking through the halls. Unbeknownst to him, his calm day is about to be pestered by his overenthusiastic colleague. Professor Hors came running to him with a broad, innocent smile and eyes full of life. Bro was not having any of it. He knew that whatever his coworker was smiling about would ruin his perfectly calm day. So, he turned around and walked back in the direction he came from. Len Hors grabbed his feet while repeatedly thanking him like an overstimulated dog. Professor Albie had to use magic to keep him away. This is not the first time he has seen Len Hors act out, but he's going a bit too far today. Professor Hors didn't give a damn even if he's suspended midair. He just wanted to express his gratitude for discovering the genius that is Leo Plov. Albie was confused. Why would this magic fanatic call a knight in training a genius in magic? Hearing him mention knighthood and Leo in the same sentence made Professor Hors irate. He insisted that the kid must become a sorcerer at all costs. He won't stand by and let such a talent rot away while wielding metal sticks. Finally, his assistant and part-time babysitter Anna caught up with her boss. While he was ranting about how sending Leo to the Knights would be an insult to the field of sorcery, Albie dropped him to the ground. At least the professor is very appreciative of Anna catching his fall. After running all over the campus, the sunshine and rainbows demeanor of the assistant is gone as she insists that they return to class. Speaking of the devil, Leo walked past the commotion, and Professor Albie gave him a reassuring smile. The young man reckoned that sorcerers have not changed at all with time. Even to date, they're all lunatics. A week after the magic theory debacle, the exploratory classes finally ended. Leo is just chilling on the roof, reading his book away from any drama and over-the-top commotions. As usual, he is researching his own legacy. Today, Kyle, the supposed hero of the beginning, is widely known as a fraud. Seeing how the world moved without him and the change of perception is still weighing on his mind. While he was quietly contemplating the passage of time on the rooftop, the first-year professors were running around the campus halls. Without even knocking, they barged into the principal's office with complaints. In Professor Elan's hand is Leo Plov's application form. Listed on the kid's major course are knighthood, sorcery, and summoning, all three of the major hero disciplines. After seeing the kid's untapped potential in every field, the professors are engaged in a war to get him to their side. Moreover, a student taking on every major discipline is unprecedented in any hero military academy. They think that their students must devote themselves to a single major. Principal Badian just laughed at their squabbles, saying Leo reminds him of that fictional hero from all those grandiose storybooks. Hearing the principal made the professors pause their chaotic debates. Principal Badian cited that the fifth great hero, also known as the hero of the beginning, Kyle, is the only person who allegedly mastered all classes in history. Meanwhile, Celia and Chelsea are currently panting in exhaustion as they run around the track. Carr found Leo lounging under the shade of a tree and asked why the girls are training so heavily on a weekend. Chelsea asked Leo to train her, and he obliged. That doesn't explain why they're just running circles, though. Leo simply answered that, above all, even more important than weapons, a hero must possess unlimited stamina. This cardio exercise will enable that. Even Chelsea has completely bought into the idea that stamina is the most important aspect of a battle mage. On break, the girls flocked to Leo as he handed them water bottles to hydrate. Surprisingly, Chelsea seems to like training her stamina on the weekend. She wants to run with Leo. As soon as Celia heard the poor girl say that, she spat her water as the trauma of training with Leo surfaced in her mind. Since he's already planning to run anyway, he might as well direct the ladies. But Celia has vowed to never run with him again. Noticing their interaction, Carr asked Celia and Leo what was going on between the two of them and why they seemed so close. He even thought they were dating at first. Celia ended the confusion by dropping the bomb that they are nothing more than cousins. Leo is her paternal aunt's son. The revelation that Leo has Zerdinger blood running through his veins utterly shocked Carr and Chelsea. Leo finally got off his ass and started stretching to join the ladies for the next round of hellish cardio. Not one to waste his time training, Carr made his exit. He's planning to explore Lumeria City a little bit more. Celia tried to tag along with him in the blissful city, but Leo had already grabbed his cousin by the hair. Today is a training day. Carr could not help but think that every noble in his circle doesn't have an ounce of dignity. Time passed, and the much-awaited class assignment day finally arrived. Leo walked to the classroom he was assigned to, namely Class 1-5. Inside, he saw Carr sitting down, calling his buddy over to the seat beside him. The sly businessman was the first one to arrive since he already knew what class he was going to be assigned to. Say what you want about Carr. That boy is good at gathering information. There's another familiar face in their class. Chelsea is in her seat. It's hard to tell if she's dead or alive after the hellish weekend of training with Leo. Carr asked what kind of hell Leo put the girls through, and he answered that they just went over the basics. Suddenly, a pair of lowly extras peeked through Class 5, also known as the Class of Anguish, and mockingly wondered how many of their pitiful juniors would remain after the first semester. A lazy voice interrupted their jeering. He asserted that these two seniors mocking the freshmen are much more pitiful in his eyes. The pair of extras turned around and immediately felt their blood run cold. A man with uncombed dark hair and an unkempt beard stood before them. His aura was suffocating and overwhelming. He is Herod Edmund, homeroom professor of Class 1-5, also known by his nickname, the Wailing Wall. This dude told the extras to form a chair with their bodies, and they did it out of fear. He sat on his human chair and addressed his students as worthless dregs. Class 1-5 is the class for failure, which scored the lowest among the incoming students. Professor Edmund is pretty sure that the kids have already heard rumors about him. He asked his class if anyone knew why he chose to assign himself as the advisor of this cursed class. Carr carefully raised his hand and answered that the Wailing Wall must have stepped in to help everyone improve their grades. The professor already knew Carr Thomas by his full name. His answer is fitting for someone ranked dead last in the academy. Professor Edmund changed the question and asked if anyone in this inferior class understood the duty of a Lumine Academy student. Chelsea bravely raised her hand and answered that it's their duty to capture the hero's world through practice missions. That is the correct answer. But all the professor can see are the faces of kids who would die a few minutes after entering the hero's world. So, wouldn't it be better if he just expelled the pathetic bugs who would only hold their comrades back? This is precisely the reason why he took over Class 5. That is also the reason why he is widely known as the Wailing Wall. While he was scaring the shit out of his students, Leo stood out as the only one unfazed. The professor quietly assessed that this kid would probably be fine if dropped into a hero's world right now. He then ordered everyone to change their attire to exercise clothes and head to the drilling grounds afterward. It's the first day of classes, so it's time for some combat studies class. Class 5 followed his directions and quickly assembled on the track. While his students were exposed to the harsh sunlight, the professor set up a huge umbrella, a lawn chair, and even some tasty drinks to relax on the sidelines. It's time to fix the rotten mindsets these kids have developed since joining the prestigious academy. He asked another question. He questioned what would save them in the real world, where life is so fragile when push comes to shove. Nella Carvin, a timid night major with a rare healing attribute aura, meekly answered that she would be saved by her fellow comrades by her side. That's the wrong answer. Professor Edmund asserted that their only saving grace is their own ability. Only when they hone their skills in the face of danger can they even begin to lend help to their comrades. As a follow-up question, he asked if anyone here is confident in their ability to protect their comrades. A jolly, fiery, and poised voice sounded out from the crowd, asserting that she was confident in her capabilities. To explore that answer, the professor asked the girl to create a fireball so they can see if she's an adequate magical knight. The girl in question is the spunky and upbeat Eliana Layden, a dual-class magical knight. After displaying her fireball, the professor wasn't convinced that she had what it takes. He even insulted its size and intensity, telling her that it's not enough to even kill an ant. Challenged by the professor's comments, Eliana injected even more mana into her spell, creating 2 fireballs while warping her surroundings into a pool of flame. Not only did she increase the number of fireballs, but she also doubled both of its sizes. Professor Edmund sarcastically called her spell impressive while sipping his juice box. He summoned a little orb of wind and asked Eliana to try hitting the little fellow with such an amazing fireball. That orb of wind eventually turned into a wind spirit and swiftly flew in the air with its own will. It flew close to Eliana and mockingly laughed at her fire while touching her nose. The easily excitable young lady was naturally pissed. She started dishing out fireballs left and right, desperate to clip the annoying wind spirit. After wasting her mana with attacks that can't even make contact, the professor interjected, "What's even the point of increasing the number and size of an attack if you can't even hit the enemy?" This exercise is to make his students feel the thing that they lack most, the ability to use their skills effectively in practice. They must hone their skills and push past their limits. That's the hero's way. The Wailing Wall smiled and announced that the class would not be dismissed until one of them caught his wind spirit, Sylph. Leo is just listening quietly. The professor's words may be harsh, but he can confirm that all of it is true. Maybe he should try this class a little and try catching the Sylph. While his entire class is running around the track, Professor Edmund's eyes are fixated on Leo Plov. With all the conversations around the kid, he is determined to sniff out if he's just full of shit like the fictional hero Kyle. Unfortunately, even with the whole class participating in the hunt, the Sylph is simply running circles around them. From a distance, Leo emitted his aura, controlling and directing it to focus on his feet. With one mad dash, he launched himself like a scarlet cannonball, leaving destruction in his wake. His speed skyrocketed to its limits. His focus is impeccable. Maybe he really is the first true all-class hero to be born. Carr and Chelsea were already winded after trying to catch the unreasonably fast wind spirit. Then came our boy, his feet and body clad in a burning aura. Using the enhanced concept of aura step, he made his way to the skies, the blind spot of the unruly Sylph. With gravity and momentum from the aura step, he launched himself downwards, leaving little to no window for the Sylph to dodge or get out of the way. His first try ended in a fail by a millisecond. It looked like he botched his first attack, but the smile on his face says otherwise. He subtly manipulated the streaks of aura in his hand, forming a thread that attached itself to the Sylph's foot. This effectively held the wind spirit in place to be grabbed. Unfortunately, none of the Class 5 students got to the stunned Sylph first. It was captured by the lightning-fast brat Duran instead. Just as expected, his speed is really outstanding. But he only captured the Sylph due to Leo's aura thread restricting its movements. Nevertheless, the smug look on the brat's face is still annoying to look at. Another person walked into the field while cheerfully clapping his hands. This pompous-looking man is Sejin, the homeroom professor of Class 1-1. Right now, he is second in the graduating voting class. He took this chance to flex the talent of his class, even offering to teach Class 5 a thing or two. Meanwhile, Professor Edmund isn't even looking at the field. He's snug as a bug in his chair while sipping on juice boxes. He then asked his colleague to take over his class for the day. While Professor Sejin is number 2 on graduating class voting, this chill guy is consistently bagging number 1 every year. The students, especially Carr, are hyped to see the clash of the 2 pillars of Lumene Academy. These 2 professors have worked at the academy for over 2 decades. Professors Ain, Yura, and Len were apprentices of these 2. Overhearing his yapping, the adorable Nella Carvin asked Carr how he knew so much about academy affairs. Unfortunately, this boy has no riz at all and is prone to scaring the hose. Professor Sejin haughtily laughed. While he doesn't know what his rival is scheming when he takes charge of the worst class of freshmen, Sejin is eager to find out. So he requested a competition between classes 1 and 5. As for the event, they are going with Lumene's historic ball sport called Bastera. Professor Edmund stood up from his chair and called Sejin a genius. He shook his bro's hand and added that learning through practical experience is the best. After accepting the challenge, he slumped back into his comfy chair and left all the officiating and supervising to Sejin. Professor Sejin can't fathom just how he keeps on losing the graduating class vote to this lazy-ass man while his students look at him with pity. At least the Wailing Wall addressed his class one more time, saying that this Bastera match against Class 1 is an opportunity for them to practice their skills. And one last thing, he warned them that if they lose, everyone in the class will be expelled. Hearing that, even the students are shocked since it's their first class ever with him. Not to mention that their opponent is Class 1, a class with 3 captains on their side. Herod doesn't care about their excuses and tells them to try even harder in that case. Also, he thinks there's very little for them to worry about when they've got the freshman representative of all people in their class. He instructs Leo to choose 6 candidates for the competition. Contemplating his teacher's request, Leo is certain that he's being tested for some reason. It's not coming through a place of disgust. Rather, the kids in his class have all lost their spirit after just 1 week of enrollment. With their spirits crushed, Leo thinks that Herod wants to use him as a means to lead the defeated students of Class 5, since they've lost all hope already. Class 1's teacher uses his magic to create the arena, while Leo thinks that there has got to be some kind of way out in the Bastera competition, a way to help his classmates from their despairing situation. Lumine Academy's top brass are facing Class 5. Even Chelsea is sweating bullets in fear. She tries to explain the rules of the Bastera game because Leo doesn't know a thing about it. The game is a combat sport that stood the test of time at the academy. Based on that description, it doesn't sound more special than just a ball game. Thomas explains that it isn't so simple like that. In reality, it's much more threatening than a simple game. The Sword Princess Celia eggs on Chelsea for looking pale in defeat. Her provocation ends up with Chelsea lashing out in anger, refusing to lose to a Zerdinger. Leo, on the other hand, is as cool as cucumber and urges them to relax, since they won't be losing anytime soon. Celia is pissed and wants to show him the results of her training soon enough. As for Chloe, she's hell-bent on scoring a win against the freshman representative, unlike their previous outcome. Anyway, Sejin tells the participants to approach the arena. Leo looks to his classmates to ask who's going to join. 2 of them step forward, those being Chelsea and Eliana. The stakes are high as losing guarantees expulsion, which is why they're willing to do whatever it takes to win. Thomas and the others also quickly follow suit, as Leo signals to the professor that their class is ready to begin. Sejin whips out the ball and tosses it up in the air. Each participant from both teams has their eye set on the ball. The game begins with Duran and Leo reaching for the ball, but Lightning Boy is a second faster and manages to snatch the ball, seizing the initiative. The game has literally just started, and this man Leo decides that now would be a good time to learn the rules. Turns out the rules are quite simple. All he has to do is infuse the ball with aura, shooting it into the goal without using one's body. The first team to reach 11 points will win the game. Duran is on a rampage and releases the ball at a thunderous speed, causing Leo to evade it at the last second. As for Thomas, he couldn't even see the ball as it cut past him and scored right into the net. The first goal has been secured by Duran of Class 1, and has already caused even greater despair for Class 5 students. Tide is feeling the pressure and thinks they're all going to be expelled at this rate. So now, Leo wants to know about how one could acquire the ball. There are basically 3 ways to do that. They can do it if the ball goes out of bounds during their opponent's turn, or if someone can catch the ball. As Tide is about to explain the final method, their conversation is interrupted with Eliana getting brutally taken down by Celia's explosive throw. The Sword Princess mocks them for carelessly talking when they should instead be focusing on the match. The situation is really bad for Eliana. Players can't directly attack or block opposing players, so the third way is to cause the participant unable to continue. The only way to do that is by attacking others with the ball. Leo has heard enough and seizes control of the ball, believing that it's the right time for them to fire back. Eliana is rendered unable to continue, leaving Class 5 with 1 less classmate to fight with. Both professors are observing the match. Sejin reflects that any team with an advantage of the fire element usually possess overwhelming advantage in the game, and when it comes to the House of Zerdinger, their flames are the most powerful. He can't figure out why Herod decided to entertain the challenge, knowing that the Sword Princess is in Class 1. He thinks that there's just no way for Herod's class to fight back. In response, the lousy professor simply yawns at him, as if to think nothing of his words. Addressing Sejin, Herod brushes an old memory of his first student from the House of Zerdinger. That woman is known as the Empress of Bastera, a complete monster in the game. Herod is happy to share that her child is playing the match for Class 5, a piece of knowledge that shakes Sejin. Back to the game, Class 5 is acting like a whiny bunch, selling themselves short and regretting their decision to join the academy. Celia sees Leo casting his flames and realizes that he's finally getting serious. Charging an ever-burning fireball, he releases the ball at such a monstrous speed that it requires Chloe's icicle mountain to stop its wrath. She acts all high and mighty, thinking that she's successfully deterred his strike. But Leo shockingly appears next to her, having read her like a book. Leo confidently declares that he'll score regardless. He jumps up and punches the shit out of the ball with his fist, causing Chloe's barrier to tear away like butter. Even Sejin is impressed by the boy's impressive battle IQ. Class 5 cheers in support for the freshman representative. The professor of Class 1 understands now that the true game has just begun. We then see a bunch of goals scored, causing the number to jump up to 9 against 10. Many players were even incapacitated during the match. Finally, the lightning-fast Duran releases his strike, hoping for this throw to end the match. But in the end, Thomas sacrifices his body, putting his everything to stop the ball from scoring. He manages to catch the ball at the brink of mana exhaustion. In the end, Thomas collapses, causing both classes to stand at an equal footing. However, Class 5 only has Leo left, while Class 1 has all three of its captains intact. It seems like a great disadvantage for their class in terms of numbers alone. Ice Mage Chloe is ready to exact her revenge after her crushing defeat in the previous exam. She forms numerous copies to further increase their defenses. Leo is about to take his one final leap against Celia and Duran. His feet arched from the ground. He blitzed with inhuman speed, shocking the three captains with how fast he vanished. Leo flash steps at such an incredible pace that he dribbles past Celia without her noticing. He has no intentions of taking them head-on, which means he's aiming for the goal. This leaves everything to Chloe to defend. She's trying her best to locate the real Leo among his own copies. Just analyzing this level of magic leaves her winded as Leo zooms past her. Chloe collapses in defeat, questioning how a mere human is capable of using the magic of the elves. In the end, not even the three captains could stop him, and the conclusive winner of the match is Class 5. Leo's name is chanted as Class 5 students celebrate in joy. They were so close to getting expelled. Sejin is surprised to learn that Herod put them on death grounds just to win the match. The three captains, on the other hand, are left devastated in defeat. Sejin realizes that he's got to deal with them and approaches Chloe, asking if she's frustrated at their loss. He reminds her that even if they lose, they must always salute their opponents as tradition. He acknowledges their efforts to try and secure Class 1's victory. Sejin is really proud of the students who worked hard and even those who cheered for their allies. His beaming words of encouragement steal their hearts. But Herod isn't so kind and poetic. He straight up calls them losers and annoys them for it. Both classes performed their best in the sport. Class 1 managed to show off their talent, while Class 5 boasted perseverance and fought hard until the end. Sejin emphasizes that their ability to break past their limits allowed them to take the win. He hopes for both rival classes to learn from each other. In earnest rivalry, they shake hands. Celia pisses off Chelsea, who returns the insults in her own way. Thomas, on the other hand, is overly cheerful with his handshake against Duran, who is staring at him like a pale ghost. Chloe is sent to the brink of tears and shame. Leo extends his hand, praising her for her performance. He thinks that with just a little bit of effort and experience, she could really become someone of amazing stature. She takes his words as mockery at first, but seeing the boy's sincere expression, she changes her mind. Chloe hopes that she'll overcome Leo one day and shakes his hand. A month has passed since then. Our trio is enjoying a meal when Thomas curiously asks about their club selection. Instead of joining a club, Leo is interested in making one, causing Thomas to lose his damn mind. Chelsea being his #1 supporter, she's willing to join it immediately. The club he's wanting to create will be called the Hero Research Society. It's a strange name, but Leo has an ambition to investigate the forgotten hero, Kyle, who is considered a fictional character with no real relevance in history. Thomas thinks that no one will join that kind of club, but Chelsea is seriously a real one with how ready to join she is. There's some kind of commotion going nearby, which makes Thomas suddenly remember the special thing about today. Today is the day the 5th-year senior classmen mark their return after clearing the dungeon. Since the fragments of the hero record are scattered across the world, occasionally, they are responsible for creating dungeons on their own. These are called the hero dungeons. The senior students of the academy clear the hero dungeons and retrieve the fragments. They're supposed to leave for at least 2 weeks, and oftentimes even months. Leo thinks that his mother must have gone through similar dungeon raids before. Chelsea sees the senior classmen and realizes that they're the best of the best in the academy. Introducing the muscular Easterner, Lee Jamua. The southerner beauty next to him is Torua Yan, and finally the comfort clothing enthusiast is Ulta. Still, one guy seems to be missing. The strongest person in the academy, the council president Reese. Thomas is about to explain about him when all of a sudden, our boy is nowhere to be found. The feds took him for being too OP. Just joking, Celia hurriedly rushed him outside. It turns out that Reese, the council president himself, has requested a private meeting with our boy. Leo is perplexed and asks why he's being asked to meet him all of a sudden. Celia thinks he's a dumbass when it comes to anything school-related. She thinks he'll understand why when he gets there. So he goes there, sitting in a place that strikes odd to Celia. And then we see the Sword Princess jumping to hug her brother. Yeah, you heard that correctly. Reese is her brother and thrilled to meet Leo, who is aiming for all class. They share a dumpling meal together, but for some reason, Celia is nervous because she's never tried them before. She takes a bite and finds herself delighted by the taste. The big brother has been meaning to take her to this restaurant ever since she came here. More importantly, he's intrigued to meet Leo, whose mother used to boast a high reputation in the family. He also remembers how Leo's mother was known to be famous during her school years. She was a student who did way too much to achieve legendary status. For example, she confidently talked shit about the desserts served at the academy. She once gathered all of the students to invade the principal's office. Celia is shocked to learn about her involvement regarding the famous incident. The brother-sister duo talk to each other in joy, while Leo is impressed by Reese and thinks that he's worthy to be called the best of the best at the academy. Before long, this guy is destined to become a hero. Reese thinks it's time for them to have fun with dessert. He tells them to go out while he's finished paying. As they're leaving, Reese is surprised to find a strange object in his blazer, not knowing why he found it there. The scene cuts to Herod's class, where Eliana is dying to ask him a question. This guy straight up calls her question pathetic before even hearing it. He's got no chill. Eliana wants to know why they've yet to choose a class representative for Class 5, since the other classes have already decided. Herod thinks lightly of the suggestion and casually admits that he forgot about selecting one. Being the lazy asshole, he literally just tells Leo to become the representative. Eliana and Tide have to remind this clown about the democratic selection process. However, they quickly learn why it's for the best to stay shut. Herod wants the chosen class representative to take care of all the notes so he doesn't have to work. Through a transmission, the students are told to take the Hero Studies joint class. The first-year students are requested to go to the auditorium at once. Leo asks if they should be leaving immediately, and his suggestion is approved by the teacher. They meet at the auditorium where Leo and Thomas stumble into an exhausted Chloe. This girl is looking like a zombie and begging to purchase some recovery potions from the alchemist. The purchase is made and she receives the only potions he has. Leo thinks she might be doing too much when it's only the start of the year. Chloe chugs the potions and refuses to accept Leo's advice. Since she's the top student in magic theory, she's extremely anxious about her position. After all, it's only a matter of time until Leo learns modern magic and quickly bulldozes her in that exam too. Thomas, being an idiot, doesn't get what's so bad about being second place. Chelsea has to remind this dumbass about Chloe's position as the tower magician. Battle mages don't ever have to worry about falling behind in theory, but for Chloe, it's everything. The magic investigation and research is the heart of the magic tower, so her very pride is at stake here. Chelsea is annoyed and really wonders if the alchemist is a magician at all at this point. Meanwhile, Chloe isn't looking sharp despite the potions and notices something. Right then, we see Headmaster Kalian observing the strange reaction of the damaged hero's page. Reese has brought the hero's page and claims that it reacted to something. It ended up damaged to a certain extent that it should never have reacted, and yet it did. There wasn't even a relic around for it to happen. The headmaster asks if it reacted after the incident, and learns that it didn't react again. Kalian is deep in thought and has decided to focus on this matter on his own. He tells Reese to rest up as he just returned from the mission. The headmaster asks his assistant Elena to take the damaged hero's page to the auditorium in the Hall of Beginnings. He wants it to be present in the first year's joint class session. We come to learn that fragments as small as this are capable of reacting if the person mentioned in the hero's record comes in contact with it. In this case, it's Leo, but none of them know that yet. In the Academy's auditorium, the first years are sharing their first joint class session together. There's too much noise, which is why the cute Professor Artian has to request them to remain silent. Ignoring her warnings, they still bicker about carelessly. Artian is fed up and releases her fiery rage, reminding them with a shivering warning to shut up unless they're looking to die. Her cute and shy demeanor suddenly turned into cruel and killing intentions. She cusses the heck out of them for being morons. Artian experiences a jolt after learning that they've all gone quiet. She returns to her dainty and shy demeanor, acting like nothing happened just now, while the rest of the students are sweating bullets. They've simply come to accept that she's scary as hell when she needs to be. Leo has observed her powers and regards her as a spiritualist, which were extremely rare even in his previous life. Artian initiates the class session with a dagger in hand. She talks about the appearance of the hero record and what caused the hero clans to appear in the first place. In order to open a hero's world, an object holding sentimental value to that hero is required. Basically, a medium of some kind. That's why it's much easier for the hero's descendants to open a hero's world without much difficulty. It's also why the Academy reserves the hero's records, treasuring the relationship built between their families. To give it a perfect analogy, it's kind of like the relationship between a key and a treasure chest. Leo's impressed by the explanation and is all ears to hear what's next. Artian continues to emphasize the importance of hero studies, which is crucial for uncovering clues about a hero's world and increasing their understanding. As the students advance through the years, they'll end up choosing a hero to draw strength from and clear their pages. The professor's explanation is cut short by Elena's sudden appearance. She showcases them a hero records fragment that the 50-year students recently collected. Seeing the mystical object, the students roar in excitement. She opens it up slightly before closing it shut. Artian wants to tell them anything before experiencing what it's like to see the fragment. She wants to know about their intentions after becoming heroes. Celia jumps ahead and claims that she wants to become the strongest knight in her family's lineage. Artian is impressed by her ambitious goal. Meanwhile, Chloe is interested in writing a spell book that acts as a record of her original creations. Many students exchange their ambitions all the same. Thomas wants to play a supportive role to the hero candidates. At last, Leo stands up to declare his outrageous goal. His objective is to fully destroy Erebos for good. This declaration catches the attention of not only the students, but also the professors. Ardian tries to transition smoothly, despite being shaken by his words. The rest of the students from the other classes are gossiping about his fancy goal, believing that they're just empty words. As for the professors, Herod is kind of stumped, knowing that Leo just doesn't say things without intention. It's been 1,000 years since Erebos was divided into multiple pieces and sealed. However, he's also resurrected in similar ways over the recent years. Even a single piece is responsible for unleashing much destruction. But this kid just started the impossible. He doesn't just want to eliminate one piece of the demon, but the entirety of Erebos itself. Ardian wants to help explore the hero's record at last. She wants to give each class a chance to guess the hero's page, before moving on to her explanation of how one can clear a hero's world. She also advises them in the case of unexpected situations, reminding them that the professors will always be monitoring them, so they shouldn't be messing around carelessly. The students are excited and stammered to finally experience the joy of touching a hero's record. Ardian thinks it's only right to call the representatives of each class to step forward. Celia from Class 1, Leo from Class 5, then Abad and Chen from the remaining classes. There were actually 2 fragments retrieved from the dungeon, but for the purpose of their lesson, they'll only be using one. The second piece is quite small in comparison, but it's still here to show them the different shapes. First up is Leo, who proceeds to interact with the piece, prompting the hero record to open. The hero's name and chapter are both hidden, but even the professors are worried that the record is reacting harshly. All of them are transported inside the nameless hero's world, baffled to discover an environment of chaos and destruction. The class representatives and the professors have been transported to a different world. What greeted them was a mountain of monster corpses littered all around what can only be assumed as a battlefield. Trying to get on top of the unexpected development, Professor Edmund warned everyone to brace themselves as they were now inside a hero dungeon. Professor Sejin, with his quick thinking, found a landmark they could use to figure things out. A fortress wall situated away from their spawn spot. Oddly enough, Leo Plav recognized the place from the Age of Catastrophe, the last line of defense for the last city, the walls of Gardaslan. If his line of thinking turns out to be correct, and the timeline is right, then Leo is the only one who knows what is happening. From a distance, he heard a familiar voice calling him by his old name, Kyle. The voice apologetically admitted that her unfulfilled wish was indeed a foolish one. The voice belonged to a woman that the modern times hail as a legend, one of the original heroes and Kyle's comrade, Lycinas. As foolish as her wish was back then, she wholeheartedly believed that they would eventually save the world. And they did. Seeing a friend who existed thousands of years ago stirred all kinds of emotions inside Leo. Facing Lycinas on this crumbling battlefield was outside of his wildest dreams. Her smile lit up the entire hero's dungeon, shattering reality and knocking everyone back to the real material world. This quick and bizarre event stemmed from Kyle grabbing the little piece of unknown hero's record, which was solely meant for display. Chensha worriedly asked the professors what had just happened, but none of them knew what to do. With an exasperated look, Professor Edmund hurriedly declared that classes were suspended. He urged everyone to stay calm and exit the auditorium in an orderly manner. While everyone makes their confused exits, Leo stays at the podium, still holding the tiny piece of ripped paper, deep in thought. He was certain that what he was holding was his own page. Kyle's page. In his hand is the biggest clue for his mission, a fragment of his own record. Seeing Leo in such deep contemplation fascinated Professor Edmund. Once the hubbub died down, the students scattered to find empty classrooms to hang around since the rest of the classes were suspended for the day. In one of the classrooms, Leo explained that they briefly saw the legendary Lycinas, the King of Wisdom. Thinking that the Academy unearthed Lycinas' hero record, Chelsea's eyes sparkled as this marked a historic event. Eliana pumped her fist in frustration, regretting that she did not fight for the class president's seat harder. If she did, she would not have missed such a massive opportunity. Carr gave her a look as though she did not stand a chance in the race. Picking up on the mockery, Elian rightfully rained down punches on the poor boy. Hearing the commotion, Professor Edmund entered the room to scold them for being so noisy. He gave them a choice between self-study or expulsion. With his eccentric ass, it's hard to tell if he's joking or not. When the professor exited the room, the students did not dare cause another ruckus just to be safe. Deep in thought, Leo asked himself why his hero record had been reduced to a complete mess compared to other records. It was in such a state that even he had a hard time recognizing whose world it was supposed to be. The opening prompt also hid the name of the world and the chapter of the record. It was almost as if someone intentionally destroyed his record to possibly erase his legacy, Since hero records are relics of the past that make it possible to inherit a hero's power, sabotaging one indicates that someone does not want to see the birth of a new hero. The only feasible suspect with the motive and means is none other than Erebos. He might be shattered into multiple little pieces, but his power knows no bounds. This incident just lit a fire in Leo's ass to investigate why his hero record had been reduced to such a state. After the hero record debacle, a whole month of uneventful school life passed. Let's turn our attention to the magic department class. In there, the absolutely dripped-out Professor Horse is explaining the contents of their midterm practical exam assignment. The first years are tasked with creating their own original magic. Hearing the mention of unique magic struck fear in the hearts of the young mages. Original magic is a type of magic that distinctly showcases a magician's individuality, creativity, and power. In today's era, where activation techniques have become mainstream, magicians rarely strive to create spells of their own. However, original magic can become one's secret technique to use in critical situations. This stems back to the star magic that every elf learns. As a matter of fact, star magic is also a minor copy of original magic. There had only been one person in history who wielded the true and complete power of star magic. That is none other than its creator, the founder of Nebula and one of the founding heroes, Luna. Hearing the professor emphasize the importance of the upcoming midterms made Chloe lock in. Sitting beside her, Leo could not help but notice an odd book on her desk. Simply being near the book gave him the heebie-jeebies. It emanated an oddly dark and familiar feeling. Seeing Leo taking an interest in her book, Chloe hurriedly hid it away inside her bag. If he's not mistaken, that was a grimoire. As if on cue, Professor Horse dismissed the class and wished them luck with the formulation of their own spells. As the first years slowly trickled out of the classroom, Leo ran after Chloe and grabbed her by the hand. Surprised, she shot her with an indignant look. Leo smiled and invited her to have lunch together. Of course, he did so with ulterior motives. He saw how sketchy she acted when she hid that grimoire, and he wanted to know more. Forcefully swatting his hand away, Chloe turned his invitation down, citing that she did not have time for such nonsense. Her mind is preoccupied with the thought of beating Leo in the upcoming practical exam. Just in time to diffuse the tension in the air, Carr interjected with his upbeat energy. He called Leo a rascal for daring to challenge the top spot in the Ice Queen's magic studies. Chloe is still taking her loss against Leo in terms of techniques. However, when it comes to pure magic, she refuses to let anyone surpass her spot. With clenched fists and commanding determination, she vowed to win the midterms no matter what. Leo knew that if he backed out or phoned it in, it would be disrespectful to Chloe's convictions. So, like a true sportsman, Leo offered his hand and gracefully accepted the challenge, promising to prepare well. Chloe shook his hand with an empty look in her eyes. I've never seen anyone more locked in than the Ice Queen. Goofball Carr was watching from the sidelines, absolutely in awe of his boy's natural technique to trick a girl into holding hands. Before the sunset, Leo found himself in the massive and monolithic Tower of Heroes. He's been told that somewhere in this gigantic place, Lumene Academy's forbidden library can be found. If he can get into that place, he might find some clues about the mystery of his lost hero record. As he ascended the stairs, some seniors were charmed by his aura. Halfway through the top, someone called him by his full name. It was a senior with tanned skin, curly hair, and big round glasses. Dare I say, an absolutely baddie. Blowing her bubblegum, she asserted that she's been hearing a lot about the young prodigy from Professor Len Hors. This baddie is Torua Yan, a 5th year in Lumine's Department of Magic. Leo politely bowed and extended his greetings, not thinking much of the interaction with the senior. He tried to continue walking up, but Torua extended her long legs, stopping him from going any further and asking what business a first-year student could possibly have at the Tower of Heroes. Leo truthfully answered that he was simply here to meet with the student council president. Seeing his confidence, Torua's interest was piqued. She insisted that if he joined the magic department exclusively, he'd have plenty of opportunities with regard to the tower. She was quite pushy, even though he was already taking classes in the magic department. Torua finally stopped messing with him and moved her leg away. Leo continued on his way and thanked her for understanding. With a hint of threat, she reiterated her desire for Leo to declare magic as his main focus before the semester ends. She made herself clear, and it's up to the boy how to interpret her words. Leo responded with his perfectly polite smile. Once he reached the top of the stairs, he ran into a few more seniors heading even higher in an elevator. He joined them inside and pressed the 9th floor button. Much to his embarrassment, the button refused to activate no matter how many times he pressed down. He continued pressing and pressing, and the faulty lift continued to test his patience. Leo would have been stuck on this floor if it hadn't been for a friendly voice explaining to him that the buttons only activate when mana is channeled into it. The manly voice belonged to another senior who recognized Leo. This one sounded a little more upbeat and polite than Torua. This kind-looking big man is Lee Zamua, another fifth-year student in the night department. He flashed the rumored first-year class representative a toothy grin. Once more, Leo gave a polite bow to his senior and returned the greeting. Like Tarua, Lee asked him what he came to the Tower of Heroes for. Upon saying they had some business to discuss with the student council president with a smile, Lee's interest was piqued. It is rare to find a freshman in the entire academy who is not even a bit scared of him, let alone someone bold enough to barge in straight into the student council president's office by himself. Impressed by his solid mental fortitude, Lee proposed that Leo should seriously consider joining the night department as his main affiliation. Tired of having the same conversation over and over, Leo just dryly laughed. Finally, after various interruptions that drained him before the main topic even began, Leo reached his destination. He knocked on the door, introduced himself, and asked President Reese if he could come in. A warm and welcoming voice from the other side of the door invited him in without a fuss. It looks like President Reese is knee-deep in paperwork, even though it's nearly sundown, but he welcomes Leo with a smile. Without wasting the president's time more than he already has, Leo got straight to the point. He asked to have access to the Academy's forbidden library. Hearing such a request shifted Reese's mood to become more serious. He knows that Leo is not the type to mess around, so he gladly explains the gravity of this request. You see, there are only two ways for an ordinary student to access the sacred forbidden library. The first and most straightforward way is to conquer a hero dungeon, which is easier said than done. Upon a successful dungeon run, it is customary for the conqueror to personally return the retrieved pages to the hero record stored in said library. Knowing that he was far off from getting access through that method, Leo asked for the second way in. President Reese leaned forward, and with a wily smile, he promised to spill the secret of this second method once Leo finally joined the student council. A few days after getting cornered by seniors and the student council president, the day of the night department's practical exam arrived. For the first day of this monumental practical exam held in the Academy's open track stadium, a lot of people, students and faculty alike, have come to watch. Being the natural businessman that he is, Carr brought out a whole popcorn cart to peddle his goods to the audience. His sales talk was pretty straightforward. One can't watch the upcoming matches without munching on some popcorn, right? Seeing their friend bust out the big guns, Chelsea doesn't know whether to be impressed or embarrassed. Eliana, on the other hand, felt like Carr would have already gotten filthy rich if he wasn't stuck in Lumani. Leo lined up with his freshman night department peers and scanned the audience. Sure enough, Chloe did not come to watch. Professor Ain stood on the track, mean-mugging his students to instill the seriousness of this upcoming assessment. Without further ado, he called on the first pair that will be sparring in the first and opening match. The first one is Class 1's Hall Snafe, a snaky-looking young man with eyes and a smile that cannot be trusted. His opponent is none other than our boy, Class 5's Leo Plov. The combatants stepped onto the stage, hyping the whole arena up. In the stands, Carr is busy looking for more customers, and his eyes are locked in Professor Sejan's direction. He cheerfully ran towards the grumpy professor, eager to earn some more dough. With samples in hand, he asked Professor Sejan if he would like to buy some popcorn and drink combo to go with the match that was about to start. Being the snob that he is, he harumphed as if the idea of eating popcorn was below him. He believes that only slobs like Professor Edmund Harlan would buy such a thing. Sensing that he was not going to break the professor so easily, he looked in Class 1's direction for an assist. Thankfully, Celia was there. One look was all it took for her to understand what Carr needed. Using her secret technique, she turned her cutesy charm up to 11 and asked if the professor was buying the whole class some delicious popcorn. With the trap set up, all that's left for Carr to do is egg on the rest of Class 1 to cheer for their professor's generosity. Seeing his kids chant his name with such vigor, Professor Sejan's defenses slowly crumbled. He might be a snob, but he's also a hard-working professor who just wants his students' affection. The great professor caved in and asked Carr to hand his students a popcorn and drink combo, but strictly limit it to one per person. While Carr is cashing in on his booming business, the combatants for the opening match have taken their starting position. With a confident, bordering on a cocky smile, Leo called his opponent lucky to be the first victim. Hall Snafe could sense that the first-year representative did not see him as a real opponent at all. He is determined to make Leo regret that. This snake boy, Hall Snafe, hails from the heroic family of the Snafe lineage. Before the first round officially starts, let's hear the assessment's basic structure from our favorite popcorn vendor. You see, midterm practical exams for the night department consist of a simple series of duels. Those who achieve 5 sparring victories will get a passing grade. An air of uncertainty filled the stands. Although they're all aware that Leo is the first-year representative, only a handful of them have seen him in action. Since Leo is also majoring in 3 departments, they believe that he should have a gap compared to those solely focused on just one. Not to mention, Hall is the third best in Class 1, behind the absolute monsters Celia and Duran. His weapon of choice is the spear, and his aura contains a sharp and toxic form. Brandishing his spear with impressive accuracy, Hall demonstrated his skill. In his mind, he only knows Leo as the arrogant guy who's always hanging around Celia. Professor Ain gave the final reminder that the one who renders their opponent unable to fight back will get the W and treat this sparring match as if it were a real battle. As soon as the starting signal was given, Leo was taken aback when he felt a dark aura that he had not felt in a long time. Surprisingly enough, that dark aura did not come from the enemy in front of him, but in the direction of Lumine's campus instead. The slick and disgusting dark energy lingered in his brain and spelled a deadly premonition in his mind. Unbeknownst to Leo, this worrying aura originates from the library, where Chloe is burying herself in countless magic books in preparation for the magic department's midterm exam. The formula she's writing joined the many torn pages of underwhelming ideas she came up with. The pressure is starting to get into the Ice Queen. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't seem to create a winning and unique magic with her abilities and knowledge alone. Reaching her wit's end, she took out her frustration on the books scattered all over her desk. The ghost of Leo's talent is living rent-free in her mind, and it's slowly eating Chloe up from the inside. Her refusal to lose against the boy wonder pushes her to her limit. When she looked at the books she scattered all over the library's floor, one stood out as if it was calling to her. It was the grimoire she had been carrying for a while now. With nowhere else to turn to, she firmly believed that this thing was her only hope of winning. With her desire and need to retain the #1 spot in the department, her mind was left vulnerable and open to foreign influences. Her dilemma and the dark energy emanating from the grimoire were so palpable that they caught Leo's ability in the middle of his first match. Seeing that Leo was distracted by something, Hall took the opportunity to close the distance and punish the enemy's carelessness. He stabbed his spear, aiming for Leo's head. Thankfully, our boy regained his bearings and dodged in the nick of time. Pulling away, Hall presented his family's signature technique, turning his spearhead into a poisonous winding blade that reeks of toxicity. His snake spear moved in an unpredictable fashion, eventually finding its way closer and closer to Leo's chest. Maintaining his composure, Leo grabbed the spear with his bare hand without faltering or even blinking. Hall Snafe was taken aback. The power required to stop his attack must have been enormous. Making the mistake of being surprised, Hall lost the grip of his weapon as Leo pulled it out of his hands. Refusing to let go, Hall was dragged along with his spear. Not knowing what to do, he looked like an amateurish fool. Once he was pulled in close enough, Leo compounded the embarrassment by giving Hall a kiss on the cheek using his hardened fist. It sent the poor snake boy barreling through the track like a rag doll. He might have been distracted for a little bit, but a seasoned veteran like Leo would never make the mistake of being careless in a fight. Insulted by the embarrassing first exchange, Hall Snafe pushed his aura to the limits, filling the arena with toxic gas. He urged Leo to stop showing off as the real duel is yet to begin. Constantly pumping the green aura out of his body, the perimeter was filled with poison mist. Hall reckoned that since there are talks about how Leo can't even use aura, he can capitalize by leaning on his strength. Even if Leo is physically stronger, it's impossible to make up for a fundamental weakness. Seeing the green mist wafting in the air, Leo summoned his fiery aura while reveling at how rare poison auras are. As the mist tried to enter his effective range, Leo efficiently burned the poison without much trouble. Still confident with his supposedly superior technique, Hall ramped up his aura use. He believes that unless those flames are on Celia's level, he'll win the battle in the end. While the snake boy was stroking his own ego in the middle of the spar, Leo had already closed the distance unscathed. It's time to make this boy pay for being so arrogant and careless. Leo walked the rest of the gap between them like he was a JoJo character, his fire absolutely mogging the fuck out of the poison. Seeing the colorful display of auras in the arena, the audience was hyped as they chomped on their popcorn. In Class 1 seats, Duran watched the battle with his permanently furious expression. Celia was dumbfounded while Chelsea cheered for her man. Everything Leo does is cool in her eyes. Celia never would have thought that Leo had already increased the power of his flame aura to such a terrifying degree. Poor Hall Snafe also felt the unexpected of Leo's flame as he got closer and closer. By his estimation, Leo's blaze is already on Celia's level, the #1 knight in their batch. Who would have thought that a guy who's taking every major in the academy would be this good as a pure knight? Still, Hall steeled his resolve and prepared to pull out a move that he'd been saving in hopes of defeating Celia at the right time. He never expected that he'd be forced to use it on Leo Plav in the opening match of midterms. He shaped his aura into an image of a poisonous serpent, summoning a snake prison and launching it in the opponent's direction. Curious about the technique, Leo lets himself be caught by the snake prison, standing still while analyzing the serpent's image with interest. Hall really thought he was doing something impressive, even shooting Celia a glance in the stands while his cheeks blushed. The poor guy had been working on this skill to catch up to Celia's flame, and he was quite optimistic about this debut. In response to his timid blush, Celia sighed and pointed at the opposite side of the arena. Hall's momentary arrogance distracted him from the fact that Leo was already boiling his snake prison alive, causing the serpent's body to bubble and sizzle under the heat. With one final push, Leo completely eradicated the pitiful aura spell without much trouble. Hall's eyes widened. The technique he worked so hard on was burned away like it was some trash spell. Frustrated, he stopped using aura altogether and lifted his spear to attack. Throughout the entire battle, Leo had never even drawn his sword. When he finally did, he parried the spear with enough force to knock it out of the enemy's hands. Putting the tip of his blade against the brat's neck, he warned Hall to never take his eyes off a flame, or he might get burned. While the brat falls to his knees, Professor Ain announces the winner of the first match. In a fiery display of dominance, Leo Plav took the W. His biggest fan, Chelsea, felt her heart flutter as she cheered for Leo. Carr, always believing in his buddy, knew that Leo would win this one without breaking a sweat. Hall walked back to his corner and accepted that Leo was built differently, even when it came to real fights. No wonder he can be by Celia's side all the time. Much to his surprise, a familiar voice praised his performance even though he lost miserably. Looking up, he saw Celia smiling from the seats, celebrating his cool technique. Even though he lost, Hall just got complimented by the girl she's been chasing after. So it was not that bad. He'll hold on to that compliment for the rest of his life. Proceeding to the next match, the professor called Class 5's Elian Layden to the stage. Jumping right into the fray with his fiery energy, Eliana demanded to know who her opponent would be right away. When Professor Ain called Chen Xia of Class 10 to the front, Eliana's pumped-up energy was dashed. She was so hyped to whoop some ass, but she drew the short end of the stick, and now she has to fight one of the Knight Department's top 3. The ladies took their position, standing opposite one another while waiting for the go signal. With a smile, Chen Xia wished her opponent good luck with a serene bow. Even her politeness felt powerful. Still, Eliana is not one to back down, even if the odds are against her. She returned the polite greeting with a determined smile. As soon as the starting signal sounded, Chen Xia's hand gracefully moved to summon her water aura. The waves danced around her body like a serene ocean. In contrast to her vibe, Eliana's fiery will took the form of wildfire while she held a rapier in her hand. Leaning into the strength of her blade, Eliana pushed her speed to the limit with a stab. Chen Xia prepared to receive the attack by surrounding herself with a water sphere. Watching from the stands, Leo can tell that tanking that rapier would hurt like a bitch. But so is running at full speed and bumping into a solid shield made of water aura. Eliana was too hasty. She tried to end the bout in one attack and was punished quite heavily for it. Chen Xia's water sphere wasn't just a purely defensive skill, it could cook her enemies too. For the second match, her serene power grabbed the W handily. Eliana stood up and wiped off the pain of getting clobbered in one exchange. Despite the embarrassing loss, she believes that she didn't do too badly. Leo had already expected this result. It was a horrible matchup to begin with. Still, the battle could have lasted much longer, and it could have gone better for Eliana if she had fought with a level head. For the third match of the day, Professor Ain called the Knight Department's leading figure, Celia Zerdinger, of Class 1. Much to everyone's surprise, the third match would be a blockbuster matchup that no one expected this early. Celia's opponent will be none other than Duran Moira, who will perpetually be in second place in Class 1. Celia looked at her grumpy classmate and smiled. She can already tell that this fight would be fun. Contrary to her smile, you can tell Duran is taking this spar with utmost seriousness. Back in the stands, Carr somehow managed to get a 3D glass while he got high on his own supply. He shoved the whole bucket to his seatmate, Leo, to share. Everyone's gaze was fixed on the stage. It's not every day you get to see the Clash of Titans. The vibe did not disappoint at all. The stage started heating up, and the energy was electrifying. Both of their offensive-oriented auras roared. With both blades drawn, the fight to determine the de facto top student of the Night Studies department is about to commence. As soon as the starting signal sounded, Grumpy Duran made the first move with his lightning-fast first step. His whole body and his sword looked as though they melded together in a thundering form. But Celia is a talented swordmaster in her own right. She had fast enough reflexes to parry the first few attacks without a problem. To most of the first years, this is their first time seeing the top scorer's combat power. Completely engrossed in the nail-biting battle on the stage, Carr asked Leo who he was betting on. Casually shoveling handfuls of popcorn in his mouth, Leo shared that Celia would lose if the bout continued at this pace. Carr was surprised by Leo's callousness. Still, he's not counting his cousin out just yet. Even from the stands, he can see the calm and collected look in her burning eyes. He reckoned that this girl must be hiding something up her sleeve and waiting for the right moment to dazzle everyone. Picking up the pace, Duran increased his speed to another level and continued his relentless assault. Caught off guard, Celia almost got nicked in the neck if her instincts didn't take over to move ever so slightly to the side. Confident that he could start overwhelming Celia, Duran entered a close combat showdown with his #1 rival. That was a big mistake. Celia raised her ornate blade and summoned a flame that eclipsed any blaze shown today. It burned so wildly and brightly that the arena's protective barrier started flickering, struggling to contain the power. Most of the freshmen had never seen a fight of this level before. Leo praised Celia's patience and timing in bringing out a brilliant move perfectly. Carr was confused, so Leo elaborated. You see, the freshman sparring field is fairly small and contained. Celia must have figured that since she can't keep up with Dura's raw speed, she can just turn the entire field into her own burning stage. Even the playing field. With home court advantage, she essentially forced Duran to a tough spot, forcing him to be more mindful of his movements unless he wanted to get burned by the blazing fire. On top of that, the heat will make it naturally harder to see. Celia was already a great fighter, but she had gotten even stronger and craftier in using her abilities. This lady just opened his domain expansion. With the heat slowly frying the grumpy blondie, Celia took advantage of the lapses in his defense and seemingly blinked behind Dura. Her fiery slash could have ended the fight if it wasn't for Duran's pesky reaction speed. Pushing himself to the limit, Duran gritted his teeth and brandished his sword in an act of desperation. Losing his calm in a spar against someone as competent as Celia is a death sentence. She completely neutralized his blade by grabbing it with her bare hands. Right when she covered the entire arena with her blaze, she's been absolutely dominating #2. Her immaturity and savagery showed by ending the bout with an unconventional attack. Instead of her blade, fist, or legs, Celia bashed her head against Duran's and knocked the grumpy blondie out cold. Dispelling her flaming aura, Celia Zerdinger won the third match of the day, and the crowd went absolutely bonkers. While wiping the dust off her uniform, she smiled and suggested that Duran should do some more strength training instead of relying solely on speed. Finally regaining consciousness after momentarily passing out from the headbutt, Duran took her helping hand to get up from the grassy floor. The Academy's press team and those that shipped the #1 and 2 reveled at the sight of the lovely pair. Leo was pleased to witness that his cousin's harsh training paid off. Suddenly, nosy-ass Professor Edmund spawned behind the boys while indulging in some popcorn of his own. As it turns out, he's been listening to his class reps commentating from start to finish. He found Leo's tasks insightful. By the end of the day, every match in the night studies practical exam wrapped up smoothly. Celia Zerdinger ended the day with 4 wins and 1 loss. Duran Moira finished with the same record. So did Chen Xia. All of them had only 1 loss to their names out of 5 matches. Leo Plov, on the other hand, ended the day with a perfect 5-0 sweep, officially taking the crown as #1. A week after the eventful night studies practical exam, the written test for general linguistics wrapped up. Professor Edmund, looking disheveled as usual, praised his classroom's hard work for the past semester. While he waves goodbye and heads for the door, he warns them that some may still flunk out because of a bad score. As soon as the door shut, Class 5 erupted with various reactions. Eliana, as fiery and energetic as she is dreading expulsion herself. Meanwhile, most of the nerds gathered around Chelsea to see her answer sheet and how high she scored. As the nerds clawed at each other for a chance to see the golden answer sheet first, the class president was just quietly napping at his desk. Sitting in front of him, Nelia woke Leo up to ask how he did with the written test. He says he didn't do too badly, but his expression betrayed him. Nelia was amused that the all-powerful class rep could look like a normal student too. She added that if he has any aches or pains, she'll be 1 call away to heal him with her magic. Overhearing the generous offer, Carr interrupted, claiming that his shoulders and back had been feeling really stiff lately. Before he could scam his way into free healing, Chelsea gave him real pain to endure with a bonk to the back. After getting rid of the distraction, Chelsea turned to Leo to ask about his practical summoning practice. She heard from Tide that Leo hardly ever shows up to practice at the summoning field. Well, that's because Leo has been diligently practicing out of everyone's sight. Knowing Leo, it felt on character for him to do so. Chelsea eagerly asked what rank he'd be aiming for in the upcoming exam. That's a dumb question. If it's Leo, of course, he'll be taking first place. On the day of the summoning practical exam, a lot of seniors and faculty staff gathered to watch this year's traditional event. The biggest event of the first semester for all first years is the Summoned Creature Race. Today, Rumba Tess, a third-year student from Lumene's summoning department, will comment live. Seeing all the pageantry, Celia asked her student council president's brother if this was really a test. He explained that the Summoned Creature Race had become a long-standing tradition in the summoning department. Moreover, it's one of the chosen events during the interdepartmental exchange, making it a constant hot topic. If there's an event, Carr always smells customers and the possibility of making money. So he busted out his popcorn and cola business once more. The race hasn't even started, and he's already selling out like crazy. The crowd is making a lot of noise and having fun. This is a stark contrast to the unnerving silence on the stage where the participants are gathered. The summoning department freshmen already feel nervous, and the uproar of the spectators does not help. Meanwhile, the top dogs of this race, Leo, the white-haired lady, the white-haired dude, and Chen Xia, are concentrating on the challenge ahead. Eliza Hergen, the white-haired lady from the renowned summoner hero family of the North, came up to Leo to praise his exceptional display in the Night Studies practical exam. Then, she prodded him about his preparation for this summoned creature race, seemingly unconvinced of his skills. You can't blame her either. For someone claiming to be well prepared, she had never seen him once during group practice. Hearing Leo get called out, the bandwagons immediately jumped in to question his preparedness. They urged Leo to step aside if he's not going to take summoning seriously. None of them have even seen him properly bond with a summoned creature before. Tide tried to quell his classmates' unprovoked anger, telling them to chill out. But the dumbasses continued to yap and yap, yelling at Tide to not side with the golden boy who was completely disrespecting their summoning department. Chen Xia is getting worried about the increasingly tense atmosphere before the test begins. Sen Liu, a summoning department freshman from Xia's eastern continent, came up to her. He reckoned that since she already had good grades in her night studies exam, she shouldn't try as hard and worry about summoning studies. Having enough of the needless chatter, the captain of the southern continent and the #1 student of the summoning department, Walden Tyden, stepped up to shut all the noise down. He asserted that they were going to argue about how much they'd practiced with their summoned creature. They should do it somewhere else, away from his ears. Hearing his arrogantly boastful remark, Sen Liu flared up in anger. Walden doubled down. He affirmed that it's annoying to listen to noobs brag about riding summons as if that's some kind of accomplishment. Still not getting the hint, Sen Liu asked the captain if he felt guilty, given that he had never shown up for taming practice either. Well, Walden never bothered to show up because such elementary training is simply not worth wasting any time on. He's not an idiot who has to train to handle mere griffins properly. Sen Liu, the dumb fuck, motioned to take a swing at Walden the Sigma. Leo jumped in to keep the peace by grabbing the fool's arm. He warned that if a fight starts before the exam, it won't end with just a penalty, but disqualification. That was enough to get the dumbass to back off. Tide apologetically went up to Leo, uncomfortable with the tense atmosphere among the freshmen. He explained that the Summoning Studies department boasts a naturally significant skill gap between majors and minors. Since Chen Xia and Leo, who aren't single majors in summoning, are ranking so high on the ladder, the second years came to lecture and scold the freshmen for letting such a thing happen. In addition to not showing up for practice, they see Leo as a negligent golden boy, even though he has no intention of doing the race half-heartedly. From afar, it seems like some unsavory forces are watching with interest. A dark power loomed over a hooded man. He seems way too invested in this race, more specifically, in one student. That student is Sen Liu. The dumbass is emitting some unnatural power within him, and he fully intends to use that power to cause harm and even death just to win it all. Before the race begins, Runba will give a brief explanation of the rules. First, the freshmen will only be allowed to use their summoning skills during the test. That means even dual-class students are prohibited from using aura or magic. Once the clock starts, they must tame a random griffin in the stables. They must take to the skies and pass through the vast island of summons. Once through, they will use the Silent Lake as a turning point before heading back to the academy. Who will claim the spotlight in the first semester midterm? Will it be the captain of the South or the East? Will Eliza live up to her family's legacy, or will Sen Liu's hidden trump card change everything? Or maybe our boy Leo Plav will scoop up yet another all-time banger of performance to cement himself as the top dog yet again. All the racers lined up at the starting line, waiting for the starting bell to ring. Miss Yura addressed her students with passion. She urged them to shake the nerve off and stick to what they've practiced. Anyone who panics and messes up will be left behind after the race. Her message to shake the nerve off just ended up causing more anxiety to the racers. Miss Yura then proceeded to call their marks and get ready. With a shout that reverberated throughout the arena, she officially kicked off the annual summoned creature race. While most students clamor towards the griffin stables, a certain group started the race by using their summoned creature skills of various elements. Without a lick of warning, the group shot their techniques at Walden and Leo. Even the commentator was shocked at the opening buzzer. The summoning students are turning on the crowd favorites. Leo yelled at Tide, saying not to worry about him and to go ahead, to focus on the exam. Heading his words, Tide stayed on top of his tamed griffin and left the class rep. The stands made their stance clear. They think it's unfair that the summoning department guys would target the supposed front runners. Leo knew that these dipshits never liked him, but he never thought they would go this far to mess with his game. Rumba claimed that even while the crowd is jeering, this is still a somewhat valid strategic move. Moreover, Walden quickly dispelled the elemental magic by brute force in just a few seconds. With traces of elemental magic still lingering around his body, he calmly strode over to the griffin stables. He quickly tamed one without much effort and mounted the beast. He turned to Leo and offered help if he was having a tough time. Leo dismissed his offer, knowing that this child's play was not much of an issue. Without uttering another word, Walden took off flying with his trusty steed, quickly accelerating to the skies faster than anyone else. Leo was left as the only racer still stuck on the stage instead of roaring in the skies. Chelsea watched her man surrounded and trapped by elemental magic with eyes filled with concern. Can Leo bounce back from this dirty maneuver? I guess we'll find out soon enough.